Hello and welcome to the Weekly Stuff Podcast with Jonathan Lack.
And Sean Chapman.
We are here to talk about stuff this week on the show. We are back from Thanksgiving break. We've got a bunch of stuff to catch up on. We've seen movies. We've played video games. I've finished Pokemon. You've played Death Stranding. I don't know how far you are into that game.
I've played a lot of it. I also don't know how far I am because I don't know how long it is. I think I'm maybe over halfway through. I don't know.
I have heard crazy length ranges from people on that game. So, yeah, I have no idea. We've got a bunch of news, including a report about Microsoft's plans for new Xboxes next year, which I find very interesting that we're going to talk about. So, yeah, it's going to be a fun episode. We've got a lot to go over here. But how are you doing, Sean? We didn't have an episode last week. I guess we did actually have an episode the week of Thanksgiving, but then, over Thanksgiving break, we recorded a lot, you and I. You didn't hear it because it's being held till later. We have officially recorded all of our best of the decade stuff, and that is going to be coming at the end of December and early January as the end of this year and the beginning of next year's podcasts. So we were working on that. So we didn't have an episode last week. I think we're going to have an episode every week through basically middle or end of January because a lot of them are recorded and we know where the other ones are coming. So sorry for the little break there, but it was just to accommodate everything else. But how was your Thanksgiving, Sean?
It was good, yeah. I didn't, other than Death Stranding, I don't think I really did anything. Like now, because usually I feel like when you do post-break episodes, there's a pile of stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
But it's been watching The Mandalorian as that's coming out. I'm continuing to rewatch through Star Wars The Clone Wars. That show continues to be very good, and people should watch Star Wars The Clone Wars if they haven't, because it kicks ass. And then, playing Death Stranding, which is a weird, good, maybe good game. I don't know. My feelings on Death Stranding are really complicated, and we'll get into that at the end of the show. But yeah, that's all I've really been doing is that stuff.
Yeah, I feel like I have a lot of sort of consumer stories to tell, and we'll get into that. I guess I kind of want to start, Sean, with something that is on the top of both of our minds, which happened very recently this last week, which is a little bit of Gundam news.
Mm-hmm.
Gundam. I don't know. I'm trying to come up with our pop-in Gundam topic because normally we keep it for the other show. But...
Yeah, we don't have a pop-in Gundam topic because we made a whole podcast to contain the pop-in Gundam topic.
Yeah, but Gundam actually came into the real world this week, Sean, because for the 40th anniversary they showed Mobile Suit Gundam Char's Counterattack in theaters. And normally I think I would just save this story for whenever we do another Weekly Suit Gundam, but it also crosses over with my continuing outrage at my local theater chain, which sucks. So should we tell the people about this?
Yeah, and just to note for the Gundam fans in the podcast, the Victory Gundam is in the pipeline. We will record that episode within a few weeks here for sure.
Yeah.
It's been a little bit of a break on Weekly Suit Gundam, mostly just because we're busy and have not had time to record that podcast because we've been recording too many other podcasts.
And we want to give it justice, yes. So the Victory Gundam podcast will be out before the end of the year. I think we can say that. So that is coming. But let's talk about... if you have not been following our ongoing Gundam discussions on the other podcast, just quick recap. Mobile Suit Gundam Char's Counterattack was the first original movie in the Gundam franchise, came out in 1988, and was sort of the big finale to the initial Gundam saga from original Gundam, Zeta Gundam, Double Zeta. So really great movie. You and I have an entire episode about it. It's one of the Weekly Suit Gundam episodes. I think it's episode 9 or 10. But we really love that movie. It's a great movie. And we were both really excited because Fathom Events did a nationwide screening of the film on, this was December 5th, I think. It was this Thursday. And you and I had both snatched up tickets early to that because, hey, Gundam does not come to theaters that much. So it was exciting.
No, yeah.
Sean, why don't you tell us about your theatrical experience, and then I'll tell the people about mine.
Yeah, I mean, mine was pretty normal. Other than, it's just annoying that it was a Thursday night because it was... I was almost late to the screening. I got into the theater right when it started because that night I had all this shit I needed to do. And it was rush home at 5:30 because I had to stay at the school late and then eat dinner really quick and get dressed and take care of some stuff I needed to do at home and then rush to the theater to get there by 7 o'clock. Why do it on a Thursday night? That's just annoying.
It's because they have to, because on Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays, the studios basically gobble up every screen and will not allow chains to show anything else.
Yeah, but Shark's Counterattack is a better movie than any movie screening right now. So
and it made less money. So I mean, but it's not about quality. Sadly, it's
it isn't. It is for me.
Yes.
So other than like that, I have no idea when the last time I would have gone to a movie theater at Thursday would have been. It must have been. I'm not sure. Maybe this is the first time I've literally ever gone to a movie on a Thursday. I'm not sure that's ever happened before. I usually save that for Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. But yeah, then I got to the theater, sat down. There were like 10 other people there because, it is a very niche thing. And I was like, honestly, there were more people than I was expecting because I was the first person to buy tickets for that showing. To be fair, I bought those tickets in like early October. Right around the time they first announced it, I pre-ordered tickets. But it's the first time I've ever done like tickets where you like can pick your seats, and every single seat was available. I'm like, okay, I'll do this one. This one looks good. And yeah, the quality of the projection and all that kind of stuff was standard in the sense that it was like a little bit substandard. Like the audio was not like everything was fine, but none of it was like great. Like the audio was not I felt like calibrated properly. Like the volume was just too low. Sound effects didn't sound as punchy as they should. Like it didn't sound as good as it sounded when I watched it for that podcast episode on my own TV with like a very simple like sound bar with subwoofer kind of setup. Just because they didn't have the audio set up right. And then the screen was a little dim, but not in a way that's like, I can't see anything, in a way that's just like, this is not a high quality viewing experience. The viewing experience, other than the novelty of it being very big, was better at home, but the novelty of seeing it on a big screen was still fun. Seeing it in a room with other people who like Gundam was fun. So, Movie's great, 2 thumbs up, Shark's Counterattack. It's better every time I see it. That proved true this time as well. The climax of that movie is so fucking good. And that's probably the part of the movie that benefited the most from the scale of watching it on a bigger screen. That just like the size of everything is going on and like the scope of what happens at the finale of that movie is really phenomenal. And the ending of the movie hit me very hard. And then I was utterly shocked and flabbergasted, Jonathan, at the number of people that it was like half the people in there walked out while Beyond the Time was playing. What is the Venn diagram of someone who's enough of a fan of Gundam that they're going to go see a movie screening at Thursday at 7:00 of Shark's Counterattack, but you're not quite enough of a Gundam fan that you're not just going to sit there and listen to all of Beyond the Time, because Beyond the Time is the sickest fucking jam in the history of sick jams. Who are these people? That was the thing I was most confused by.
Especially because Shark's Counterattack does not play all of Beyond the Time. It's like 2 minutes of it at the end. Like, it's... Yeah. Because that movie, the credits only go to black for, like, the last 90 seconds. So, like, you don't have to wait that long. You just, like, sit through 90 seconds, you get to hear this awesome song, and then they had a big interview with Yoshiyuki Tomino, which was a lot of fun to watch. I enjoyed that.
Yes, and then I also tweeted about this. It was a very weird experience with that interview at the end, because they pulled footage from his appearance at the New York Anime Convention that happened earlier this year, which was emceed by Austin Walker, formerly of Giant Bomb, now formerly editor of Waypoint. I think he's moved on and is doing independent projects now. But he's one of the people responsible for me getting into Gundam in the first place, of him talking about it on those podcasts. And so it was very weird sitting in a movie theater and seeing him. He's only in like a couple of shots. It's their interviews with Tomino, so they just kind of like, you see him in like the background and stuff. But it was very, very surreal seeing that. And Austin Walker from Waypoint on a fucking movie theater screen is a weird, you just don't expect that. But yeah, like a cool experience, kind of weird around the edges, but really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I do think they could have used a better transfer. It seemed like they were just showing the Blu-ray transfer, because the subtitles were even the exact subtitles from the Blu-ray, and like, it was fine. I know better transfers if that movie exists. When you blow it up to that big a screen, like, that's not what a normal 1080p transfer is for, so that was a little rough. But yeah, but my screening was a lot rougher, Sean, because the theater just fucked everything up. Just everything you could fuck up, they fucked it up. So I sit down in the theater, and they have the screen masked to 235:1, which is CinemaScope widescreen. So the widescreen you would get for like Avengers or something, right? And Mobile Suit Gundam Char's Counterattack is a 185 to 1 movie. Now, this didn't initially disturb me too much because the way this local theater does it so they don't have to mask and remask screens is they just leave every screen to one of the two aspect ratios, and mostly they match the movie to the aspect ratio of the screen. So, like, if Theater 7 is a flat screen, they'll only show flat movies in there. Since this was a special screening, I thought, okay, what they're going to do is they're probably going to show Char's Counterattack pillar boxed with black bars on the sides, and, like, that's not optimal, but whatever, it's fine. But the pre-show is going, because it's Fathom, so they had a pre-show with all this anime stuff, and I could tell it was all cropped, because I'm like, this is clearly a 16:9 screen, like show, because anime is almost never in 235 to 1. And I'm like, this is weird that they have this cropped. So I was a little worried, but I'm like, they can't possibly be that incompetent to crop a 16:9 movie to 235 to 1 accidentally. But no, they did. The logos came up. The Shochiku logo comes up. The Sunrise logo comes up. And I just stand up because I know immediately, like, yep, they're fucking it up. And I start walking out. And the movie starts and subtitles start coming up. And the subtitles are just completely cut off because they have it outside the boundaries of the screen. So I go out to the lobby and I say I need a manager. And the people at the concession stand are like, okay, give us a couple minutes. And I'm like, no, the movie's already started. You guys have completely messed it up. And more people were coming out of the theater because everyone was angry about this. And we had a pretty, not full house, but we had like 30 people in there. It was a lot of people. College town, probably more Gundam fans. Also, this is the theater that is literally across the way in the mall, across the hallway from a hobby store that sells a bunch of Gunpla. So I think there were like a lot of like people who are into Gundam anyway who come to this location. So everyone's angry. Manager finally comes out but like won't talk to us. He'll only like, we will talk to like the college kids working at the concession stand and then they'll go talk to the manager. It was super weird. And I explained the problem. They like, this is a frustrating thing in this day and age, is that no one in movie theaters knows what an aspect ratio is. So I had to explain, the movie looks like this and you've got it like this. Like I had to do it with my hands, and they're like, oh, that's what you mean by those numbers you're giving us. And I'm like, yeah. Because I started by saying, you've got a 16:9 movie on a scope screen. And they're like, what? And I'm like, okay, let me explain this to you like your children, fuckheads. And
yes, let me explain to you what your business and what your literal building and business does.
Yes. God, I know. Can you imagine
it's like going to a restaurant and explaining to someone like what medium rare means for a steak. It's like, what the fuck?
It would be like going to the Home Depot and being like, I need a hammer. And they're like, what? And I'm like, a hammer. And they're like, what is that? And I'm like, it's the thing you whack nails into the wall with. And they're like, nails? Like, that's what it would be like. And you'd be like, what the hell am I in the Twilight Zone? What's going on? So anyway, the manager goes to fix it, and I kind of yell after him, are you going to be able to restart the movie? Because we're 5 minutes in already. And one of the kids runs after him and asks, and he's like, nah, he's not going to restart. I'm like, he can't or he won't. Because to be fair, it might be they couldn't, because the way digital projection works is it's often locked down at the studio level, and theaters have no control over that. But I don't know. I've seen theaters like do the work. I know they can do the work and like put in a call and figure it out. He's like, no, he won't do it. So I go back in, I sit down. By the time I get back into the theater, we're at the point in Char's Counterattack where you meet Mirai and her kids, which is 10 minutes into the movie? Like, it's after the first asteroid has dropped on Earth.
Yeah, you've missed like the whole like opening action scene and all that stuff. You've missed the introduction of Char and Amuro into the movie.
Yes, I've missed all of that. But I sit back down and I start looking at the movie and I'm fuming. And then I realize, oh, they've got the full house lights on. Because, like, this theater and I say full house lights, it's not super bright, but this theater has, like, their pre-show lights, which is that all the lights on the sides are on. And I go to this theater every week. I know how their fucking business is supposed to work. And, like, the how it is they have this level of lights on, and when the movie starts, those lights go either off completely or very dim, and they're at the full on level. So like the movie is just totally washed out, and when a scene is dark, you can't tell what's going on because the lights are fucking on, and it's a movie theater. So I go back out again, and I tell the people at the concession stand, "You've got the full house lights on," and they're like, lights? Like, again, it was like they don't know what I'm talking about. It's like I'm a foreign fucking language. So I go back into the movie. I'm really considering just like leaving, but like I'd bought concessions and everything, you know, because I wanted to enjoy myself. It's Gundam. This has never happened. Like, this movie is 30 years old and it's never shown in theaters before in North America. So I'm trying to enjoy the movie. They do not dim the lights until about 45 minutes into the film. And after that, I mostly enjoyed it. They had fixed the screen. They'd fixed the lights. I had missed the first 10 minutes of the movie, and it's very hard to get into any movie, no matter how good, when you've just missed the first 10 minutes. But whatever. I like you, Sean. The last, I would say, because like the last 45 minutes of Char's counterattack is like one solid giant action sequence, and I would say all of that I enjoyed just immensely, and it does indeed have a great ending. I enjoyed the Tomino interview, and they showed a teaser for Hathaway's Flash. That was cool. I know that was online too, but like I had not seen it yet, and seeing it in theater, I was like, that's neat. So yeah, Marcus, Sycamore Theaters, what the fuck? Afterwards, I did ask for a refund. They would not give me a refund. They would give me passes. They did. The manager was kind of nice. He gave me 3 passes, so that's 3 free movies. Now, Char's Counterattack, this was a more expensive ticket, so that's kind of why I was mostly pissed off. But, like, good God, this shouldn't be that hard. Why is going to a movie like a game of Russian fucking roulette? Yeah,
and so you had a whole Twitter thread about this, Jonathan, the night of the screening, and I replied to that with, like, what was, like, reading your Twitter thread about, like, your awful experience had reminded me of, like, oh, right, I remember, like, the moment I sat down, like, because, again, I had to kind of rush into the theater, I sat down in my seat right around the time the movie was about to start, and I just had this feeling in my stomach of, like, what if they just fuck it up? Because I've been at movie screenings where they've just fucked it up, and then you or someone else has to go talk to somebody, get it fixed, and it was just this moment of, like, why do I have to feel anxious when I go see a movie at a movie theater? Like, why is it a thing where, like, especially if it's like, I think the reason why I had that thought was because this was the special screening that, like, if they fuck it up, they fucked it up. Like, this is the only night that Char's Counterattack is playing. So if it's fucked up, you know, either if you're lucky, maybe they have a way of restarting the movie and they can rebuild it and, like, kind of fix up that experience. But even then, like, the frustration of having to deal with it in the first place for me would, like, mar the whole viewing of the movie. And it's, like, so weird that is where we're at, that, like, I have to feel anxious when I sit down in the movie theater to hope that somebody else hasn't fucked up their job in a way that's, like, I don't have that when I go to, like, a normal restaurant. I don't sit down at a restaurant, I'm like, what if they just completely fuck up everything in my order? Like, there are some restaurants, like, that has happened, but not with the frequency with which that's a normal anxiety I have when I go and eat out.
Yeah. I mean, I did a whole thread on this also about how my opinion, and I'm very firm in this opinion, that digital projection, not digital cinematography, not digital cameras, but digital projection has ruined cinema. I think that is a provable, objective fact, and I don't think it had to be, but it obviously is. If you look at the moment of the switch between 35mm to digital projection, that is the moment when studios basically seized control of theaters. Projectionists around the nation were fired, and this just went through the roof of problems with stuff because they fired every expert and got rid of all expertise. And digital projection mostly sucks. It is mostly bad. There are places that do it well, but it is mostly bad. It is dramatically inferior to 35mm. Even if you prefer the look of digital is generally done poorer than 35mm was. I have had so many more issues in my life when we made the switch to digital than when we had 35mm projectors, because you know, in those days, if there was a problem, usually you didn't have to leave the theater because there was someone in the fucking booth watching it. You know? And they would and they cared. They were unionized. They realized this stuff. So it's a whole fucking crock. I can talk about this later. Luckily we have one theater in town where I don't have to feel that anxiety, and that's our local independent nonprofit theater where people actually care. And if I go to I'm 100% good. I know they're not going to mess it up. If I go to these other theaters, it's anxiety every time. Even if it's a movie I don't really care all that much about, I just, like, I'll look at the screen, and one of my rituals now, Sean, is I will look up the trailer on YouTube before the movie starts to check the aspect ratio so I can tell if they're fucking it up or not. Just, like, things like that. And it sucks so fucking much. But oh well, Gundam is still good. And they did have posters in the lobby. They had Gunpla posters, and now I have that. Yep. And it was really, did you get one of those?
Yep.
Yeah, it's a good poster because it's like big, like high resolution images of, like, it's the new Gundam and what's Char's suit in that movie called?
Sazabi.
Sazabi, yeah. Char has so many fucking suits I cannot remember them all.
Yeah.
It's great. Amuro just has Gundams. Char has a million shoot suits. But yes, so I have that on my wall now. I actually have that hanging up right above where I make my gunpla. So anyway,
there you go.
But yeah, that's our theater story. Let's back up though to Thanksgiving, Sean. Though I don't know if you have any Black Friday stories. If you made any purchases, I have a couple. I have a little haul I can talk about.
I mean, the only thing I did is I bought some anime Blu-rays. Right Stuff, anime.com had like super deep sales on a bunch of stuff, so I bought the Pat Labor box set, which Pat Labor is a mecha series. I bought that. I bought Combat Mecha Zabungle, which is another Tomino show, which I'll get around to eventually. I think he made that in like 81 or 82. It was like post Hideo, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I think, and then I think that's it. Yeah, I think those are the only things I bought. I did not go all out with like buying shit this year for Black Friday.
Yeah.
I just didn't have a lot that I was interested in.
I did a little bit on Right Stuff. I got one of the Vodham's OVA collections for $7, which was really great. The other one was sold out, which bummed me out. But I still haven't watched Vodham's yet, but I'm glad $7 is a good deal for that, because it's like a $40 set. And I got Pat Labor, the movie 1 and 2 on DVD, because they were like $2 a piece. I did not buy the entire Pat Labor set, but I wanted to have those movies. Let's see. And then Amazon had a fucking great Blu-ray sale, and I got some good stuff because I actually got quite a few 4K discs, not because I own a 4K player, but because 4K discs tend to come with remastered Blu-rays as well. So it's the same new master they've done for 4K, but on a normal Blu-ray disc. So I got, and I've actually never owned this movie on Blu-ray. I got The Shining, which, look at how good that cover is, Sean. That is such a good cover for The Shining. But it's a new 4K restoration, and that's also on the Blu-ray copy in here as well. And I did spot check it, and it looks like a new movie. The Shining has had a pretty spotty home video history. It's an amazing fucking transfer they've done here. Leon Vitali, Kubrick's guy, supervised it all, so it's extremely good quality. I have never owned Apocalypse Now on disc at all, and they have the new Apocalypse Now Final Cut set, which is 6 discs. It's 2 4K discs and 4 normal Blu-ray discs, and it's 3 cuts of Apocalypse Now, plus the Hearts of Darkness documentary and a bunch of bonus features. I got that for $10. That was like...
Shit.
I felt like I was ripping them off. That was great. I got John Wick 3, complete my John Wick physical media collection. That was $7. Look how good the fucking John Wick 3 cover is. If you have not seen this, look it up. It's better than the theatrical poster, and that never happens anymore. Usually, like, the Blu-ray cover is dramatically inferior to whatever they did in theaters. The Cohen Film Collection has been doing a new series of Buster Keaton restorations that were done, I think, at the like Cinemateca in Italy or something, but like really good new restorations. And I got volume 1 of that they had for $10, which is The General and Steamboat Bill Jr., which I'm very excited to watch. Steamboat Bill Jr. is the movie where the house falls on him, if you know Buster Keaton.
Right.
Yeah. It's a Wonderful Life also got a new 4K remaster. The 4K set I did not get because that only includes the colorized version on Blu-ray, and the black and white is only on the 4K disc. So I got the normal Blu-ray, but it's the new restoration. The old Blu-ray of this I think I also have, but it's got lossy audio and some other things, but they've done a whole new transfer. This is one of my favorite movies. So anyway, it's kind of cool because 4K Blu-ray is a thing now. A lot of big catalog titles are getting new restorations that are much better than what has been on home video before. So like even if you don't own a 4K player, it's worth investing in some of this because it's coming out on normal Blu-ray as well. And then this was only $3. I got Star Trek Beyond because I realized I did not own Star Trek Beyond, and that's the one Star Trek movie I don't own. So there you go.
Well, there you go.
That
was pretty good.
I got all that. I got Persona Q2 on 3DS because it was $20 at Best Buy. I don't know when I will have time to play it, but I would feel remiss if I did not buy it at some point because I do have a 3DS. My 3DS lives in a Persona Q case because it came with Persona Q1. So like, I feel like I have to buy Persona Q2. But my big purchase on Black Friday was I got a new Xbox One. So I think I've said this before, I've kind of wanted to replace it's not a launch Xbox One, but I had like an original model Xbox One, the one that, it did not have a Kinect bundled with it, but it was the one that was made for the Kinect, so the original Xbox...
Yeah, it's pre-S.
Pre-S, which is the gigantic Xbox One that is literally bigger than the 1980s VHS player I bought at Goodwill last year. It's just huge, and it's got the biggest power brick I've ever seen for anything. It is just a hulking monstrosity that takes up way too much space and way too much power. And also, it had been having more and more problems. Recently, the Wi-Fi on my original Xbox One unit just completely went out. I could not get wireless to work. It would only work on Ethernet. It's hard to get Ethernet to my entertainment center. So I was like, well, fuck this. And on Black Friday, Rakuten had a deal with a coupon where I got a new Xbox One S all digital edition, also known as the Xbox One SAD, with tax and shipping, I only paid $120, which for a brand new, that's pretty good. And it came with codes for 3 games. It came with a Minecraft code, a Sea of Thieves code, and a Fortnite code. And I have already sold one of those on eBay for $20. And because I don't need any of them. And so I'm just selling those, and I'm making more of the money back. So this was a very cheap way to upgrade my Xbox One. I'm very impressed with it so far. This is, like I said, it's the one where they took out the disk drive. It's kind of funny. I watched a video where someone took one of these apart, and literally the Xbox One SAD is just the Xbox One S, but if you open it up, the disk drive is out, and there's just a giant gap in the board where it would be. It's very funny. But yeah, I literally owned no physical games for my Xbox One. I had some physical 360 games, but most of those I could either replace digitally for very cheap. I probably won't play again anyway, like Call of Duty Black Ops 3 or something. Or they're just in Game Pass, and it's kind of hard for me to imagine using the Xbox One without Game Pass at this point, because that's so what it's built on. And yeah, I have to praise the design of the Xbox One S, because I have not seen it in person before. I think it is the nicest looking home console I've ever seen. It looks like if Apple designed a home console. It is so sleek. It is tiny. It is a very small box. I love it. It's like half the size of the original Xbox One. And it just fits great in my entertainment center. They finally built in the power supply, so it's just a power cord, no brick, none of that, just a cord. That's great. It's just a really nice little box. It does, I know it does 4K HDR a little bit, because the S has a slight upgrade. It's not as good as the X, and I don't have a 4K TV, so I can't test that, but I know that's in there. So yeah, and its Wi-Fi works. It's great. I got 3 months of Game Pass for $1 because they were doing a deal with that. It's Game Pass Ultimate, so Gold is in there too. So I've been downloading a bunch of games, and I wanted to play Gears 5, but I launched Gears 5, Sean, and Gears 5, for some reason, has a 30-minute unskippable tutorial about the absolute basics of, how to look up and down, how to move. Oh. Here's how you throw a grenade. And it won't let you play the game until you do all of it. And it's guys, this is Gears 5. What are you doing? Who is playing? Sean, do you think there's a single person picking up Gears 5 who does not know how to play Gears of War?
I mean, yes, there will be people, but that's why the easy difficulty exists. That's what Halo always did, was if you put it on the easy difficulty, that's the only time you get the full press the stick to look up and down, do which I've always thought was a fairly smooth way of integrating it, is that if you just play Halo and you start on Heroic or Legendary, you just skip that whole little opening bit.
It's a lot, and by the time I finished the tutorial, I needed to go do something else, so I haven't played Gears 5 yet. But I have been playing. The reason I specifically wanted a working Xbox One right now is because they added Halo Reach to the Master Chief Collection on December 3rd. I have not had to pay for Halo. I own the MCC digitally, and I have not had to pay for the Reach add-on because it's just all in Game Pass, so it just gives it all to me, which is cool. But I have been playing Reach. I played a bunch of multiplayer the other day, and then I am about halfway through the campaign. This morning I just finished the Long Night of Solace level, which is probably one of the best levels in the history of gaming. That's the one where you go to space and you have the dogfight, and then you're on the it's Bungie at its absolute best.
It's the level that Infinity Ward played, and they decided to make Infinite Warfare.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. It's an amazing level. But every level in that game is amazing. It's totally on par with everything else in the MCC. It is not an anniversary style remake like Halo 1 and 2, but Reach doesn't really need that. It's just a straight remaster. It's now in 60 FPS, up to 4K if you have a 4K TV. I know they've got HDR support in there. This is all on PC now too, which is cool. And they have also, this happened last year, but they've completely rebuilt the Master Chief Collection, and this is my first time really digging into the rebuilt version, and it's so good. It's so good at this point. Like, it's easily, I think, the best remaster collection on the market today, because it is so comprehensive. It's every Halo campaign Bungie ever developed. It's every multiplayer map they ever developed. It's all of Reach's firefight and multiplayer stuff is in there. Every piece of DLC. The only thing that is missing at this point is ODST's firefight mode, but everything else is in there. At this point, like, it loads super fast. Like I can't believe I'm seeing Halo load that fast at times. The matchmaking is really smooth. Obviously, there's a lot of people on right now who want to play Reach, so if you want to play a Reach match, it's very easy. The screen for multiplayer now is just super cool. It's just one big screen, and it's basically a series of toggles. So, like, if you only want to play Reach, toggle off everything else. But if you want to play on any Halo game, just have everything toggled on. If you only want to play SWAT, toggle off everything else. If you're fine playing any kind of Slayer, just keep those toggled on. It's very smart. It's super cool. It's what the Master Chief Collection kind of was always its promise. I always think the Master Chief Collection has been pretty good. It's clearly better now. I think it's worth owning an Xbox One just for that, because Halo is that good. But I am having a lot of fun playing Halo again, Sean. I feel like I have to play a Halo game like every 6 months to a year just to recalibrate myself, because it's so in my fucking DNA as a gamer. And Reach is one of the best. And it's also been funny because the last time I played Reach start to finish was my Legendary solo run.
Right.
And that game is so burned into my fucking memory, Sean. I feel like I know every piece of cover. I know every encounter. I know where the guns are. It's just like, and it's like, I haven't consciously thought about it in years, but it's just there because it on Legendary, it is such a brilliant challenge. It's a really fun challenge, but it is a extreme challenge. And I just know every inch of that game, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. So yeah, and I also just have to say, Game Pass at this point is one of the most impressive things in gaming. If you have an Xbox and haven't tried it, the library is so big at this point. It's got stuff I had no idea was in there. Like, I did not remember that The Outer Worlds is just in there. That's a brand new game that's in there. This is not necessarily a good game, but for having it for free and trying it out, Jump Force is in there. And I got to download, and that's the weird 3D Shonen Jump game where everybody looks awful. And I was like, but it's fun to play if you have it for absolute free on Game Pass.
Sure.
There's obviously a huge catalog of stuff. Every Rare game is in there. All of the Microsoft first-party stuff. Like a ton of indies, a ton of third-party. Early next year they're adding every Final Fantasy game into it. It's really impressive. And at this point, I think they've done what they probably set out to do, which is that I can't imagine having my Xbox One plugged in and not having a Game Pass subscription going, because that's kind of what it feels like it's for, and that's cool. And I think it's a good enough value proposition that I don't mind that. It doesn't feel like they're ripping me off. I mean, obviously, I would not pay $60 for Gears 5. I am excited to give that campaign a try, because I've played every other Gears campaign. I want to play Gears 5. Do it on Game Pass? Why not? That seems cool. So, and because Gold is bundled in there, you can play online. So yeah, I've been having fun with that, and I'm glad I have an Xbox One that, like, is new, will work. I really don't plan on buying the Xbox 2 when it comes out, especially because it seems like most Microsoft first-party stuff is going to be cross-platform for a while. But because Game Pass is so robust, I wanted like a working Xbox under my TV, and I paid $100 for this, so I feel like that was a good deal.
Yeah, no, the Game Pass is pretty amazing, and this summer, that's how I played, like, Outer Wilds. I played around with, like, Forza, Void Bastards. I meant to try to play a little bit Gears 4, and then, like you, I just never did it. So, like, I stared at that Gears 4 logo a lot over, like, June and July, and I never booted it up. Yeah, it's like almost too good of a deal in that way of, like, it makes you think about what are the, like, impacts of, like, I'm curious as that kind of thing and the Stadia streaming stuff happens, it becomes more common, how does that begin to impact games in ways that we haven't thought about yet?
Yeah.
Is in the ways that, like, Netflix and things like that have obviously significantly impacted the way that TV and movies work. I suspect that Game Pass in game streaming is going to pretty significantly impact the way that either games are made, well, probably how both games are made, and then how, like, we consume them and are, like, not just, like, how we consume them in, like, which games we play, but, like, how much time we spend playing games, when in our lives we play games, that kind of stuff. I'm curious to see over the next, like, 5 to 10 years where that shift and how that shift happens.
And it totally depends on if competitors sort of pick up this model. Like, no one else is really playing the Game Pass game to the level Microsoft is, so we'll have to see. But there's a bunch of, like, little things I want to try. And, they're clearly doing their job, because I was at Best Buy on Black Friday. Not on Black Friday, but, like, Black Friday weekend, getting something else. Or I think I wound up not getting anything. But I was looking around, and I saw the Switch port of Final Fantasy XII, which I've always wanted to play, was down to, like, $25. And I really considered buying it. And then I remembered, well, it is just going to be on Game Pass next year. And I haven't played Final Fantasy XII. I don't know if I'm going to love it. I would probably enjoy playing it on Switch, but I'd be fine playing it on my Xbox if I'm not paying anything extra. And so I didn't get it. And I feel like that's probably what they want you to be thinking, right? So, and again, not in a way where I feel like I'm being ripped off. They have not gotten to a point where I feel like it's a predatory scheme. It feels like a pretty pro-consumer one at this point. So, hey, I think Xbox is in a good position for the next generation whenever that comes, for them, because they've got a lot of good ideas here. I also want to say, I officially am at the point, I think the Xbox UI is better than the PS4 UI.
Interesting. I cannot deal with the Xbox UI at all. Okay. I just hate it. I hate it.
Okay.
I hate like the core idea of it. Like they've fixed it up some, but they've never kind of gotten enough away from the like. There's something about the way that, like, things move from one to the other in the Xbox One that I never feel like I know exactly what's going to happen when I push a button sometimes when I'm using that UI, and it really frustrates me in that way.
I totally...
Like, the PS4 UI has gotten slow, like, as the years have gone on. It's just slowed down a lot, but I feel grounded whenever I use it. I feel like I always know where I am in that UI whenever I engage with it.
I totally get that, and I don't necessarily disagree. What it is for me is the PS4 UI is catastrophically slow to me. It is slow to download things. It is slow to copy things. It stutters moving from one icon to the other. It's if you're doing, like, deep stuff like looking at your storage and, like, trying to do anything under the hood, it is slow to the point of unusability at times for me. I think the library screen is awful and just terrible to sort through, and that if the thing where, like, if from the library screen you want to launch a game, you click it and then it takes you to the store page and then it has a start. There's just terrible ideas like that in there. The biggest thing for me is I really like the Xbox One, how they've recreated the jewel button function. I think is really fast and smart, and it's better than the PS4's version of that. And then the My Games and App screen is so smooth. It is so fast. It has all this great data to show you how fast things are downloading. It's really clear where you go for, like, DLC and where your queue to download is. And, like, I love all of that. And I think the Xbox One had a catastrophically bad UI at the beginning and for a while. But I think this one, when did they launch this one? Like 2017, 2018? Whatever the current version is.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I very much like that one. It feels like a new console, honestly. Like, its speed and everything is really impressive for a 7-year-old piece of hardware.
To be fair, Jonathan, you are using a new console.
Yeah, but even on
it's going to be faster because it's not, like, bogged down with
my PS4 Pro is 2 years old, and it was like that day one on my PS4 Pro. So, like, that's not that has not been, and also this I felt this on my old Xbox One when I would pull it out occasionally. It was, I still like the new UI changes they've made. So yeah, we'll see. My biggest hope for the PS5 is that they figure out a way to have a UI that is good for longer than a year before they have overburdened it. And there's just a bunch of like bad, to me, like ideas that have kind of calcified on top of each other on the PS4 UI over time that I don't think they've taken into account. But this is such a weird, nerdy, in the weeds preference discussion.
Yeah, I don't like, the only thing I really do not like about the PS4 UI is the TV and videos app thing. Like that's just like a really awful way to organize any non-video game application. Everything else I'm more or less fine with. Like, it could be better. I'm like, the thing I'm most excited for with the SSDs, honestly, more than anything else, is that UIs are just going to get ridiculously fucking fast when they're on an SSD, and that's going to be great. It's just,
I mean, it's why
things will be snappy.
The Switch is my favorite UI, far out above all these other ones, because it's like a smartphone. It just works. You don't have to think about it. It just does what you want it to do.
Other than play Netflix.
That's true, but that's weird. They have Hulu, YouTube, and I think one other at this point. And so I don't know, is that a Netflix thing or a Nintendo thing? It's very, very bizarre.
Yeah, the Switch not having Netflix is the, like, Netflix having Persona 3 the movie #2.
Yeah,
like, every time I think about it, makes
it's very funny. Anyway, so yeah, those are all my Black Friday stories. I did see a bunch of movies. I saw Knives Out, which is fantastic. I saw The Irishman, which is a masterpiece. I got to see The Irishman in a theater. Sat there for 3.5 hours. It's great. That movie flies by. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. And Sean, I will tell you, I've already gone back in and altered our Best of the Decade movies episode, which we recorded before The Irishman, to include The Irishman on my top 50. There's a little part where the audio will change slightly, and it's me pretending I'm talking with you about The Irishman.
Can you say what movie got pushed out of the top 50 since it's not going to be on there?
Yeah, I just took the other Martin Scorsese I had off, so I had Martin Scorsese's Silence in my top 50. I think I had kind of a one movie per director rule, so if I didn't have that rule, Silence and The Irishman would easily be on there, but I think The Irishman is like the Scorsese movie of this decade, and everyone should. Have you watched it yet, Sean?
No, I'm waiting till break for me to have time to sit down and watch a 3.5 hour movie. Like, I don't have a problem with movies being long. I just have to wait till I can watch them.
I think that is the most nuanced opinion I've heard on this, Sean, on the internet.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Twitter's fucking stupid.
I feel like we could just end there. It's so true. Okay, you want to do some news?
Yeah, what's going on in the news, Jonathan?
Well, we're going to start with a sad piece of news, which is a rest in peace to Carol Spinney, who was the actor, the puppeteer, the genius who created and played Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch on Sesame Street. He played those characters from 1969 to 2018. He only retired last year. He played Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch for 49 years. Two of the best Sesame Street characters, two of the best Muppets, two of the best children's characters. And I think, we have a lot of overseas listeners, and I'm very curious, our fans in Australia or the UK or New Zealand, I don't know if Sesame Street is a thing there, and I would be curious to hear. Here, obviously, Sesame Street is a national institution. It is probably the best education young people get in America because our school system is so fucked up. And I think you could pretty well make the argument that there are no more indelible Sesame Street characters than Big Bird and Oscar. I think you'd put Grover on there. For the last 20 years, you'd put Elmo on there. But Big Bird is, to me, Big Bird is the Sesame Street character, and Oscar is one of the funniest. And, man, Carol Spinney, he lived to be 85, great long life, but 49 years. I really do wonder if there's a child in America who has not been touched by his work in some way. Or adults. I mean, 49 years. You could be 50 years old and have been touched by Carol Spinney's work. It's really quite amazing. And I was watching a couple Big Bird and Oscar clips from earlier today. And, the Muppets, that entire just group is magic, and he was one of the most magical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
So I just, not a ton to say, just wanted to pay a little bit of tribute, and I think here I will edit in a little bit of my favorite Big Bird moment, which is Big Bird singing the alphabet song, which is where Big Bird thinks he sees the alphabet laid out, A, B, C, D, all the way through, and he sings it as one single word, and Carol Spinney doing that tongue twister, I had that on a cassette as a kid, Sean. Like the cassette tapes we would listen. That's how we did music back in the day, kids. And literally, Sean, every time like I see the alphabet or think about alphabetizing, like I'm running through my head A, B, C, D, that song comes into my head. It has since I was a kid. And I'm sure there's a lot of other things Carol Spinney has done for which that is an earworm for people. So I'm going to play like 30 seconds of that there, just as a little tribute.
Abkadefki, Jekyllmanot, where's two X's? It's the most remarkable word I've ever seen. Abkadefki, Jekyllmanot, where's two X's? I wish I knew exactly what I mean. It starts out like an A word, as anyone can see. But somewhere in the middle, it gets awfully queer to me. Abkadefki, Jekyllmanot, where's two X's? If I ever find out just what this word can mean, I'll be the smartest bird the world has ever seen.
All right. But Sean, you want to go ahead and move on to some silly video game news?
Yes, what's going on in the silly news?
All right. Kotaku had a report this week from Jason Schreier that Microsoft is planning 2 new Xboxes for next year. This was sort of unclear what the plan was. There had been conflicting reports, but this makes it pretty clear. Microsoft is planning to have a flagship Xbox 2. I know they're not going to call it the Xbox 2. I'm going to call it that for simplicity's sake here. So they will have the flagship Xbox 2, which will be full power, whatever they're planning to throw in there. It'll have a disk drive. It'll have all the bells and whistles. And then there will be a cheaper Xbox 2 that will not have a disk drive, a la the Xbox One SAD edition, and it will have power more in line with the PS4 Pro, which puts it in a very bizarre position where it would be less robust than the current Xbox One X, more than the base Xbox One, and then, but like third on the totem pole of Xboxes out in the world. So it sounds like that's kind of their plan. Which means that, I was just thinking about the implications of this. That means if Halo Infinite is a launch game, which they have said is their plan, and if Halo Infinite is a cross-gen game, which they've said is their plan, then Halo Infinite, for instance, will be launching on the Xbox One, the Xbox One X, the Xbox 2 Mini, the Xbox 2 Max, and PC all at the same time. And I say that sentence and I imagine a 343 employee banging their head against the wall because that sounds terrifying to me. But what do you make of this plan, Sean? It sounds a wee bit confusing to me.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, and it's a little bit hard to parse just because it is obviously it's in like, I mean, it's beyond the rumor stage, but there's not a lot of like hard facts about like oh, it's going to be about as powerful as the PS4 Pro. It is going to be cheaper and that kind of stuff. Of like, without knowing, is it like $200? Is it $300? Like, what do we mean by cheaper? Because we don't know like how what does that then mean for the price of the is this the base Xbox 2 or is this like the below base Xbox 2, right? Like, it's those kinds of questions of how are they going to pitch and market this kind of device. Makes it a little bit hard to kind of know where Microsoft's head is at, because this like had been a thing that people had been talking about for a while, that Microsoft was going to launch with 2 different SKUs that would be different in a like Xbox One S to Xbox One X way, not different in the way that the 360 PS3 generation, both the 360 and PS3 launched at different SKUs, but that was entirely like hard drive space and that kind of like bells and whistles stuff. These are effectively different platforms at different power levels. It seems like what it sounds like is that they are pitching this as being if you just want Game Pass and xCloud or whatever they're going to market their streaming platform as, this seems like this is their like sort of foothold in that space of trying to hit a section of the consumer base that's not necessarily going to, buy a lot of $60 games at launch, is not going to be interested in those games running at 4K 60, HDR enabled, like all that kind of stuff. They don't want to like have the most kind of premium experience possible. And that the other services that Microsoft has available would kind of buoy that platform and make it more viable. That sounds like that's what they're pushing it as. Obviously, like, the concern is, as you pointed out with Halo Infinite, what does that then mean for game development for the next generation. How much is that going to be? Is this device going to be popular enough that video games are going to be held back to be viable on that power level, or are video games, or is like the game development going to basically ignore that base level exists and hit everything at the PS5, like Xbox 2 X, whatever it would be called, like that level, and that the weaker platform would just get fucked because of it? Because right now, the base PS4 and Xbox One S are already kind of getting fucked by new game releases.
Yes.
Like, I'm really glad I had moved to PS4 Pro last year when Spider-Man came out, because a game like Control seems like it was more or less unplayable for the first few weeks at launch on the base consoles, because the frame rate, I mean, even on PS4 Pro, the frame rate was not good, and they've patched it since. But looking at like the Digital Foundry videos for Control or Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, or even like Devil May Cry 5 on the base consoles, they just don't run well. In some of those games like DMC5, you want to run really rock solid. And that's, I think, something that gives me pause with this idea of an Xbox 2 that is around as powerful as a PS4 Pro. Like, eventually it's just going to be in the same space where games are going to not run super well on it unless you're doing like a game, using it as a game streaming hub, assuming that service takes off and is successful.
Yeah, it just sounds confusing. It's not that I don't think it can't work under any circumstances, but there's a lot of question marks. And just like, take the possible Xbox model as we've just described it and all the confusions, and then look at Sony. Sony is, to our knowledge, launching one PlayStation 5. We know the specs of that thing at this point because they've put that out in multiple Wired articles. We know what they're aiming for, and we know there will be one clear new piece of hardware, and all of Sony's internal development teams and a lot of third parties will know that's what we're making for on the PS5. That's what it looks like. They could still develop back-compatible versions for the PS4, and anything that runs on the PS4 will run on the PS5 because of backwards compatibility. But if you want to hit that higher target, it's there. You don't have to worry about supporting an older hardware for it. It works. And that makes total sense. That seems like very clear. I think having the extra boost of it'll have PS4 backwards compatibility makes it even easier for people. So there you go. But then over here, you're talking about, well, am I developing my Xbox game primarily for the Xbox 2 Max? Am I hedging because I want it to run on the Xbox 2 Mini? Where are the Xbox One S and X going to be in all of this? Because, like, it's pretty easy, I think, to see Sony moving past the PS4 and Pro really quickly, but Microsoft has been doing a lot more. Like the Xbox One X is a much more sort of active platform in terms of how much is being done for its specific power sheet. Where do those go? Because Game Pass is a fully cross-platform thing, how long is Microsoft going to be wanting everything to be on everything? Like we know Halo Infinite will be. Maybe that's a one-off thing, but maybe not. Who knows? It really, there's just a lot of question marks. Like, I don't remember if this report said it, but we're moving to all this SSD stuff. Is the cheaper one also going to be an SSD-based console?
Right.
Because if it's not, that's such a huge shift. And then, of course, the question becomes, well, third-party developers would probably really like to just work for the most powerful stuff. And if PS5 is as successful as PS4 or in that vein, and Xbox kind of stumbles again, and then it's harder to develop there, and you're not sure what you're doing, like, are they going to prioritize there? I was thinking about this also, Sean. Let's say you have a third-party game that is fully cross-platform, like Assassin's Creed or Call of Duty. That game could conceivably be coming out for, I think I counted 8 platforms, because you would have PS4, PS4 Pro, PS5. You would have Xbox One, Xbox One X, Xbox 2, Xbox 2X, and PC. And, like, that sounds nightmarish, even though, obviously, the architecture of all of these is more similar than it would be under other circumstances. There's still massive power disparities going on, and just, like, QA testing on that many platforms sounds nightmarish. So, like, there's a lot of question marks to this strategy. It also makes me wonder how worried Microsoft is about the cost of the full Xbox 2. which also, it sounds like what we're hearing is the PS5 is going to be 500. That's a lot. It's 100 more than last generation. I'm very curious how this all plays out. I wonder how nervous different parties are about console pricing. There's a lot of open questions that will be the big questions going into 2020.
Yeah, and again, with like the lack of information on this, it's hard to like fully kind of get a sense of what, or we don't have any real sense of where Microsoft's head is at because they haven't pitched it. We've only kind of got these weird leaks about it. Because there's also like weird drama about like how many developers are getting dev kits for the PS5 versus it seems like there are fewer getting them for the Xbox 2, and there's like a Twitter drama about that seems like mostly it doesn't really matter. And so there's like lots of weird new console stuff happening that feels like it's like the anxieties before these things are fully launched and we get a sense of like, or not fully launched, but like sort of fully pitched at a launch kind of event. Until we get that, it's just going to be we're in the rumor phase. We're in lots of weird rumors and tensions and shit, like console war bullshit's going on if you know where to look for it. So I just really want it to be probably, I'm guessing February probably is when we're going to start like getting the actual reveal announcements for this stuff. That's more than just a Wired article from Sony. And I'm really excited to see that because I'm getting tired of the like weird backroom like leaks and stuff like that we don't fully know what it actually means.
Here's the biggest question, I think, Sean. And I know it sounds petty, but I honestly think most of Microsoft's success is going to rely on this. What do they call it? What do they call the Xbox 2? Because PlayStation has this super like solid built-in, we go from PlayStation 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. What's the most powerful PlayStation? Oh, it's the one with the highest number. It's very easy for them, right? Yeah. Xbox shot themselves in the dick with Xbox One, the worst name ever, and now like it's because I feel like this two console strategy, it's really going to depend on what they call the next machine, because it's not going to be called the Xbox 2, but if it is, it's just I don't know. I do not know what they call it to make this clear to people.
Maybe this is where there were so many rumors about this before the Xbox One name drop that they were just going to call it the Xbox and do the iPhone thing of like whatever. I feel like at this point, I don't know if they can do that because then we have this whole like trifecta of, are you talking about, it's the OG Xbox, the Xbox One, and the Xbox, because the original Xbox is just called Xbox. So if they just try to strip the other stuff away, I thought they had an opportunity with Xbox One. Now it just would be even more confusing if we had 3 different consoles you were talking about and you couldn't tell which one was the original Xbox. I don't know what they're going to do with their branding. Maybe they just say, fuck you, Sony, and call it the Xbox 6 just to one-up the competition.
Do you think there's a chance, because I sure as shit think there's a chance, that it's still just called the Xbox One and they add more letters to the end?
Oh no, don't. That's, in many ways, I think that's probably the worst possible option, is to call it the Xbox One Z or whatever, oh my god.
Admit it. But Sean, that's a possibility.
It's a possibility. It would be the thing that muddies the waters more than anything else. If it's like, well, why can my Xbox One Z run this, but my Xbox One S can't? Right? Like,
I just feel like after they called the Xbox One X the Xbox One X, anything, there's no bottom. There's no bottom to their brand.
Yeah, it proves that like a lot got fixed when Phil Spencer took over and they kind of changed the Xbox team, but the naming thing did not get fixed because Xbox One X is a bad name. I mean, there's nothing worse than just calling it the Xbox One, which is one of the most just like head-thumpingly just stupid fucking corporate decisions we've seen in this like business in this generation. And they set it off with just, I don't know if it's the Xbox One. Anyone could have told you that was a bad fucking idea to name that thing that. And I think they should just call it the Xbox 2. I think that's like, it's dumb. It's funny. It's a goofy joke. But it is the best. I think it's probably the best possible name is just to say fuck it. It's just the Xbox.
Because
2.
like Sean, you make the joke about, or you didn't make a joke, but you made the point that like it's like an iPhone. It's the iPhone every year, but the iPhone doesn't. The iPhone is numerically sequential. They went iPhone 1, then they had the 3G, and then they had 3GS, and then 4. But starting with the 4, they went 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They skipped the 9. They went to 10. That's a common tech thing, though. So like. It's very clear. If you go to the iPhone store, do I want the 8 or the 11? Which one's better? You know the 11's better. Even if it would be kind of dumb for the fourth Xbox to be called Xbox 2, it would communicate to a shopper at a Best Buy looking at two things next to each other, Xbox One, Xbox 2. Which one is better? It's the 2. That's just, it's very, I think that's probably their best option. I am still pulling for Xbox 720. I'm not letting go of that.
Yeah, bring that one back. Here's one for you, Jonathan. What if we pull an old Nintendo trick and call it the new Xbox?
I thought you were going to say the Xbox U.
Yes, call it the. I mean, if we do end up with just add on to it, it would be the Xbox One U, Xbox One Z.
That'd be so great. I also think so this is another rumored title for the Xbox One was the Xbox Infinity, because Halo Infinite is their launch game. I think it's possible it's the Xbox Infinity.
Yeah, I'm at a place where that like almost makes too much sense that they're never going to do it. I do, like you can just see the logo build right now with the X, and then like the ends grow out of the X and connect to make the infinity symbol, but they're never going to do that. It's too good.
All right, you want to move on to some other video game news?
Yes.
So this is kind of funny. You guys have not heard our end of the decade video game episode yet, but there is a section in that where we talk about major trends from this decade in video gaming. And we were arguing whether Hearthstone, the world of the Blizzard card game, really like breathed life into the genre again, or just created a bunch of unstable knockoffs. And we have a definitive answer to that now. Because
yes, that conversation is now horribly out of
I
date.
might have to go in and cut it, because this week, CD Projekt Red announced they are pulling Gwent, the Witcher card game, from consoles. It will still be available to play on your PC or your smartphone, but it is off of consoles. And then Bethesda announced on Reddit, that's where you go when you don't want a lot of people to read your announcement, that Elder Scrolls Legends, the Elder Scrolls card game, is dead. It will not be shutting down, but Bethesda did make clear they have ceased all future updates. There will be no more expansions. There will be no more events. They had announced console ports, but those are assumedly dead. The game will still exist if you want to play it. They'll keep the multiplayer servers up, but there will be no official support from Bethesda. It is dead. Gwent is off of consoles. I don't think this card game thing is going well for anyone but Blizzard, Sean.
Yeah, obviously, like, the deepest grave of them all is still Artifacts, the game that just is the biggest bomb in the past 10 years of video games. And yeah, I mean, honestly, I played a little bit of the standalone Gwent release when it came out, and just like it was good in the way that Gwent is good, but it's like didn't have, I think, enough kind of meat to it to fully sustain its own game. It was like a fun diversion. But Gwent is a lot more entertaining when it is in like the full scope of The Witcher 3.
Yes.
Like there's something about being able to role play Geralt playing Gwent that brings the real magic to Gwent, and it's just the way that the Gwent The Witcher card game game and like UI and all of that was constructed didn't kind of bring you into the world in that way. And that was probably my biggest issue with it, and why I never like spent more than maybe a couple of hours with it all told over the past few years. Because it was a thing that I would occasionally go back to and be like, I should give this another shot and see if I'll really get into it, and never really did. I'm really relieved that Elder Scrolls Legends is dead, because now I never have to watch another fucking trailer for that game at E3. Oh my god, it's been like 5 years in that just middle block at Bethesda's E3 press conferences where you get an Elder Scrolls Online expansion announcement and fucking Elder Scrolls Legends comes out in a fucking mobile game. It's just like, holy shit, stop. Oh my god. And now, I had never heard about anybody ever playing Elder Scrolls Legends, and apparently that was for a reason, because evidently it was not ever hugely popular, because, I mean, it's not actually that old for these kinds of games. Like, these kinds of games go on forever. Like, Hearthstone will be officially supported for, like, 15 years or something ridiculous like that. So,
yeah.
buy good Elder Scrolls Legends. If there's any sign that E3 is dead, it's that Elder Scrolls Legends is not going to be at any more of them. Now this like E3, we're shutting down all the shit that's going to keep up on popping up at E3, and E3 it's like a harbinger of E3's doom. That like if I can't write like some sarcastic thing in my notes at E3 about Elder Scrolls Legends, then what is E3 anymore? Really?
Indeed. I was scrolling through Xbox Game Pass and all their games, and they have the Lord of the Rings card game as a game. Is that the same Lord of the Rings card game that was out when the movies came out when we were kids?
I think it is. I'm pretty sure it's the same rule set and all that kind of stuff.
Because I liked that game as a physical card game as a kid, and I might, because again, it's free on Xbox, I might put that on my machine and see what it is, because I'm very curious.
Sure.
It seems like that probably made a return because of Hearthstone, but it was a good game back in the day. But yeah, mostly I just want to play more Hearthstone. How is Hearthstone not on the Nintendo Switch? How?
That's a good question.
Like, they put Overwatch on there, and it doesn't work that well. They put Diablo 3 on there, and it works great. But Hearthstone is like, that's gotta be, A, the easiest one to port, and B, the most obvious one you want on your Nintendo Switch. So...
yeah, I mean, it runs on, like, tablets and phones and stuff,
Yeah.
so it's already optimized for, like, a touchscreen if you wanted to play it portably.
Exactly.
Yeah. Weird.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. Final piece of video game news. Persona 5 The Royal is launching in the rest of the world. It's already out in Japan, but it is launching internationally in English-speaking territories on March 31st, 2020. It will have another fancy special edition with another art book, another soundtrack, and an all-new Joker mask, which is cool. So if you want to pay another $100 for Persona 5, which, let's be perfectly fucking honest, we're probably going to do here. They will have all of that.
I might not for this. I don't know. I bought a lot of Persona 5 stuff.
I did too.
Like I've already bought the expensive shit, so
if
I don't know.
I find the idea of having
Jonathan, I own 2 copies of that fucking
I know
game.
you do.
And I'm going to buy a third.
I find the idea of owning 2 elaborate special editions for one game kind of funny. I don't know if I find it funny enough to actually pull the trigger, but we shall see. I am at the very least excited to have an excuse to play Persona 5 again, and it looks like, as always, they have gone all the fuck out. Only Atlas could make us not angry at paying full price for the same game again, because it seems like they've done the work to make it worth it.
Yep, and I will play Persona 5 for the third time. I ultimately opted not to buy the Japanese version of Persona 5 The Royal, even though I did kind of want to, because it's just like, when the fuck would I play it?
Well, and it will still have dual audio, assumedly, and you'll get to, it'll be all good. And Sean, should we do another 10-hour podcast on Persona 5 next year?
I mean, we probably won't do a podcast that is that big, but we should definitely do a new, like add that to, like, the 10-hour podcast, and here's, like, the 2 extra hours that's all of our talk about the Royal or whatever. Like, that's definitely in your future.
Should we do the extended edition?
Yes, it's the extended edition for, it's Persona 5, the Weekly Stuff podcast discussion, the Royal.
Yes. We should totally do that.
Stick it together.
Yeah.
12 to 15 hours of podcast goodness.
What would be the equivalent of us adding a new social link? Is that like we have Thomas on, or I don't know.
Yeah, we can phone Thomas in. He can. Yeah.
All right. Well, that'll be fun next year. And Sean, the beginning of next year in gaming scares me. It scares me deeply. Okay.
It's too much.
Let's talk about Disney for a second.
Okay. We'll never be done talking about Disney.
I'll crack my knuckles here. So we learned this week that Disney, this is a Star Wars story, Disney will not let Finn and Poe, the 2 main male characters of the Star Wars sequel trilogy, Disney will not let them be gay, even though John Boyega knows they should be gay, Oscar Isaac knows they should be gay, and every person who's seen Star Wars 7 or 8 knows it would be a good idea. It goes beyond shipping. It's just like, obviously... It's like if you saw 2 people with that level of chemistry in your life, you would probably interfere with them and be like, you guys should get together, even if you didn't know them. It's just like that blindingly fucking obvious. But they're not going to do it because Disney's homophobic. J.J. Abrams had a quote, and this was a Variety story, and he said, "In the case of the LGBTQ community, it was important to me that people who go to see the movie feel like they're being represented in the film. Variety asked him if this means there will be a queer character. Abrams replied, I will say I'm giving away nothing about what happens in the movie. But I did just say what I just said. And he said with a smile. So I kind of want to give J.J. Abrams a middle finger for that, because it is so coy. Like, tell us if there's going to be a gay character or not. What my assumption is that BB-8 will probably, like, bump up against another masculine-coded droid, and they'll say, yeah, that was our gay representation, because lest you all forget, Disney told us that the Beauty and the Beast remake would have their first ever gay character, which isn't true because every Disney villain is gay, but their first confirmed gay character, and it doesn't. What it has is the LeFou character at the very end of the movie while everyone is doing a big dance. He touches palms with another male character, a character we have never seen before, does not have a name, does not have a speaking part. There is no intimacy whatsoever. They just kind of exchange a look, and that was supposed to be their gay representation. So I do not trust J.J. Abrams on this. I do not trust Disney on this. You know, to be clear, J.J. Abrams might, as a person, want to be more, like, do more with this, but clearly Disney as a company would not let him. And this kind of started, I feel like, back in the day with The Force Awakens as a little bit of, like, a fan shipping joke, but it has become, like, it's genuinely depressing that the sequel trilogy, they can't even explore this, because the sequel trilogy has no romance in it whatsoever, which is weird for Star Wars. Star Wars always has some romance. And you have two characters with, like, amazing chemistry. The actors know it. We all know it. And they can't even really pretend they might do that. It's really a bummer, and I think it's something that, like, future generations, it's going to age these movies really, really quickly. That's all I can say about that.
Yeah, because so also on the note of, like, this is the third time I feel like we've seen this exact thing from Disney, because they did it with Beauty and the Beast. They also did the exact same thing with Avengers Endgame, where it was like, oh, there'll be some sort of LGBT representation, and then it's like, one of the Russo brothers is in the opening scene with Captain America in, like, the like therapy group or whatever, and he, like, says something about, like, oh, when I lost my husband, and that's, like, as much as it is. Yes. It's like, well, okay, yes, you have, like, a cameo of a character that, like, sort of directly implies that they're gay. Congratulations, that's like great representation, guys. Yeah, and it's. This one is particularly frustrating because it has felt like it's felt like both in The Force Awakens and in The Last Jedi, they have tried to give Finn some kind of, like, romantic relationship thing in there. In Force Awakens, it's with Rey, and that never really develops into, like, it felt like the movie was pushing for it, but then it was, like, so clearly, well, they're just, like, buddies. Yeah. Like, they're friends. Like, they're good friends. Like, it feels totally platonic, but not in a way I feel like the movie was actually going for. It's just that's how that, like, chemistry worked out. So then Rian Johnson in The Last Jedi, there's almost no Finn-Rey interaction in that movie whatsoever, and so instead you have Rose. And again, it's like feels like the movie is pushing for some sort of romantic thing to the point where Rose kisses Finn at the end of that movie, and at no point does there feel like there's any kind of romantic, any build-up there.
Because Finn's gay!
Yes, exactly. Like, legitimately, it feels like they have tried to make that character straight, and they just can't do it. And it's like, you have the perfect opportunity. It's just fallen into your lap with Finn and Poe, who have the best romantic chemistry out of all the characters of this movie, despite your best efforts to create some sort of, like, heterosexual pairing in this film, or in both of these films so far. And I will say, you know, based on the leaks I've read, if you think that this is a wink, wink, nod, there's going to be something major in Episode 9 that is some sort of LGBTQ representation, there's not. There's just not. And I don't know if this leak is actually, like, accurate or not for this part, but one of the leakers did, after this came out, said what the scene is that J.J. Abrams is, like, vaguely alluding to, and it's no more than what you've basically said about the BB-8 thing. It is exactly what people think it is, if that leaker is accurate about what he said. So, you know, fuck this shit. It's so annoying. It all, like, I legitimately think it would be better if they didn't try to do this weird, like, oh, we're going to put this, like, 5-second thing or whatever, and then, like, try to hype it up as something. It's like, fuck off.
Oh, no, totally. Like,
it's so frustrating.
It is a fraught conversation whether bad representation is better than no representation, but I do think most people would agree there's a level of bad representation that is definitely worse than no representation, and the Disney, we will do this like little wink wink nudge nudge, like there's one person in the audience who will get it. No, more than one person in your audience is gay, and they deserve to see themselves in Star Wars. And the thing is, this isn't even like there's nothing like, it's not like people are saying this should happen just so there can be a gay character. It's because you have two characters who clearly want to be together. Like, that's just, it's in the chemistry, it's obvious. Like, if they didn't do it in The Force Awakens, and I don't think anyone blamed them for that, because it's probably not what they wrote on the page, but it's what you wound up with, because movies are living, breathing, changing things. And then you can't do anything with it, and it's a real bummer, because, you know, if you look at the three main characters of the sequel trilogy, so you have Finn, Poe, and Rey, and you kind of map them onto Luke, Han, Leia, clearly Finn and Rey have a Luke Han Solo thing, which is that they're like best friends, they really trust each other. There was some tension in the first movie, but overall, like, they're buddies. And then I feel like Leia and Han are basically Finn and Poe, just without, they don't ever get to actually kiss, but like that's where they fit in the triangle. And like, how cool and subversive would it be to like have that be the triangle and have the romance in this trilogy be a gay one? And that would be so cool. And then also, as a payoff to those characters, remember, one of the best parts of The Force Awakens, everybody loves this part, is when Finn and Poe meet, and they're on the ship, and Finn helps Poe get off, and Poe gives him his name, right? Because his name was FN238 or something, and he's like, hey, we'll call you Finn. And like right off the bat, they hit it off. How much of a payoff would that be if those guys, you know, got together at the end? It would be so cool. It's so sweet. I feel like Disney acts like we're all asking for like hardcore penetrative sex on screen in Star Wars, but we're not. We're asking for like a peck on the cheek. We're asking for like, maybe they get to hold a hand. Just like, acknowledge it. You fuckers. Make it part of the story, because that's where the story wants to go. And I promise Disney, Star Wars does not make enough money in China to justify this level of homophobia.
Yeah. It's
on a cold hard capitalism level, I get it with your other movies. It's morally bankrupt, but I get it on a cold hard capitalism level. The Last Jedi made $40 million total in China. You're not going to lose. You're not losing money on this, guys. It's a rounding error. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if this is a franchise where Luke and Leia can fucking kiss, Finn and Poe can kiss. Like, come on.
Indeed.
Let's deal with it.
But Sean, Disney's not going to relent on this, because Disney has all the money in the world. Do you want to hear some box office stats?
Do I, Jonathan?
I have here a story from Deadline that came out this morning, just recapping Disney's historic box office for 2019. I'm going to read you a little bit of this, Sean.
All right.
Frozen 2 and its cumulative $919 million in global snow dust have helped bring Disney to the $10 billion threshold worldwide for 2019. Officially, the studio will cross the mark within the next day. Current studio cums stand at $3.28 billion domestic and $6.7 billion internationally. That's $9.997 billion global through today. This is a new record for worldwide box office for any studio in a calendar year, and surpasses Disney's previous placeholder of $7.6 billion in 2016. The above numbers do not take into account Fox titles. When they are added, the combined global box office for Disney is $11.94 billion so far. In August, Disney became the first studio to have 5 movies gross over $1 billion in a single calendar year, with Frozen 2 nearing the mark and The Rise of Skywalker likely to hit it as well. That will bring the count to a mind-boggling 7 titles. Once again, that was from Deadline. Sean, how much should we despair?
Yeah, because I think the most frightening thing about that is that those are the numbers before they release their Star Wars movie for the year. That's fucking... Oh my god.
Honestly, one of the most scary things to me is that I literally have not met a person in the wild, and remember I go to a film school, talking about Frozen 2. I have not seen people, other than like one or two people who are particularly into Disney, I don't see people tweeting about Frozen 2. Frozen 2 has left no discernible cultural footprint, where like Frozen 1 did. I was not like more plugged in with Disney at the time. Frozen 1, you could not escape it. Like Sean, I know you haven't seen Frozen. You know the song Let It Go, right?
Yes.
Do you know any of the songs from Frozen 2?
I know that the main one from Frozen 2 has like the word unknown in the title.
I didn't even know that.
I'm pretty sure.
Frozen 2 in like 2 weeks has grossed $1 billion. Disney has a chokehold so immense that their movies don't even need to leave a cultural footprint. They can like do Avatar 5 times if they want. And literally they're going to. But yeah.
I mean, I teach a bunch of people who were like 8 or 9 years old when Frozen 1 came out, and like even with them there is this weird sense of like when that movie was about to come out, it was like, oh yeah, Frozen 2 is almost out. And it wasn't like this, like, you know, if when I was that age and there was like, you know, a new Marvel or Star Wars or whatever coming out, I was like, holy shit, guys, this movie's coming out soon. Like The Dark Knight or something. It's like, oh my god, The Dark Knight's going to come out. You know when that's going to come out. You have the fucking like date marked on your calendar, right? If you're into that kind of stuff, if the earlier movies with that character in that franchise made that kind of impact on your life, which like Frozen made a huge impact on a lot of them. There's this weird sense of just like I'm sure they all saw it, but I never got a sense of like palpable excitement about it the way I have about other stuff when it's been coming out.
But hey, they got $1 billion for it.
They got $1 billion.
It's a genuine. I think people have been sounding the alarm a lot, but I don't think we can sound the alarm enough. It is genuinely it is genuinely scary how much Disney commands, how much of a behemoth they are, and how hard it is for anyone else to compete. I struggle to think of what even another studio's hit on a comparable level was this year. There was Spider-Man Far From Home, which is technically a Sony movie, but Disney people made it. They just didn't get the money from it. So, like, they're there no matter what. Like, I think if you look at, like, the top 10 of the year so far, it's almost all Disney. There's Spider-Man. There's Ne Zha, which is a Chinese animated movie. And I don't know if there's anything else. I'd have to look at it again. But it's really dominating. And maybe, you know, this was a particularly stacked year for Disney because they wanted extra stuff for Disney Plus at the end of the year, I think is the theory a lot of people have had. So not every Disney year is going to be this stacked. But good God, that's a lot of money.
Yep. Again, it's that thing of like what Martin Scorsese was talking about, and nobody kind of like, everybody got hung up on that one bit, which was poorly phrased, but the substance of what he was saying is like, hey guys, Disney owns everything, and like movie theaters are falling apart, and I'm Martin Scorsese, and I couldn't get like a wide release for The Irishman. I had to go to Netflix. What the fuck's happening?
I made a movie with Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, and Al Pacino in it, and it couldn't play in theater chains.
A movie which brought Joe Pesci out of retirement. Like, that story should be enough to get it, like, a wide release. Like, I'm not saying it's going to fucking do Endgame money, but it's going to do more than enough money to fucking justify it, right?
What if,
like, come
Sean,
on.
Do you think The Irishman would be more or less successful if they called it Goodfellas Endgame? And, like, did a poster, like, in the style of Avengers Endgame with, like, every person who's ever been in a Martin Scorsese gangster movie on the poster, like, in different action poses?
The most ambitious crossover in movie history. Robert De Niro plays 7 different characters in this film.
All right. You want to move on to talk about some video games?
Yeah, let's talk about the video games.
Tell me about that.
Where do you want to start, Jonathan?
Do you think I should do? What do you think? What do you think? We have a Pokemon game. It's pretty straightforward. We have Death Stranding. I assume it's not at all straightforward.
Yeah, I feel like we have two polar fucking opposite games. We have another entry in the franchise that is like, it proves on some things, but like it keeps the sort of like franchise line, and then we have Death Stranding.
How about we do Pokemon first? Because I don't know how...
Okay.
I think it's easier to transition from Pokemon into Death Stranding than from Death Stranding into Pokemon.
Yeah, I think it would be hard for you to talk about Pokemon after I do Death Stranding. So let's do it there. Let's go there.
Okay, so Pokemon Sword and Shield. I have Pokemon Shield. I have played 43 hours of Pokemon Shield. I did not realize I had, but it's on Switch, and it is in this time when I am very busy working on papers and stuff, when I like sit down at the TV and I've been binging through the show Brooklyn Nine-Nine, I will often just be playing Pokemon in my lap on my Switch, because Pokemon is not a game that like you need to like have your full sound system and TV on for a lot of it. I do for certain story events, but if I'm just going around catching Pokemon, I don't need all the bells and whistles. So I've played a lot. I have caught 290 Pokemon. There are 400 in the game, so I'm about 3/4 of the way there. I have rolled credits, which is what happens when you beat the champion, but unlike other Pokemon games, the story just keeps going when the credits like stop. Like there's a whole new act after that, and I think I have one battle left, and then that's truly like the end of the game in terms of story content. But I have played the vast majority of Pokemon Sword and Shield. I've been everywhere. Like I said, I've caught 3/4 of the Pokemon. I need another 100, but I've seen most of the Pokemon in the game. I have the legendaries. I've got all of that. Pokemon Sword and Shield is a fantastic game. It is a truly fantastic game. It's a fantastic Pokemon game, but more than that, I've kind of been racking my brain, but for games I've actually beat in 2019, like new 2019 games, I don't think I've had this much fun with another game. I am kind of blown away by how much I've enjoyed Pokemon Sword and Shield. It is... I don't know if it's the best Pokemon game, because there are some things I wish it did differently or better, but it is kind of the most fun and effortless... Not effortless in the sense that it's easy, but like frictionless, I guess is what I should say, game in the series to play, because they've kind of stripped out all the bullshit that would get in your way of just enjoying the core of what is enjoyable about Pokemon, which to me is exploring a world, catching a bunch of cool monsters, training a bunch of cool monsters, and battling a bunch of cool monsters. That's what Pokemon is. And Pokemon Sword and Shield kind of shines a light to me on how bad the franchise has been at that at certain times. Like, I feel like, for me, the big rut was on the Nintendo DS with like Diamond and Pearl and then Black and White, of like this was before they'd added the experience share. They were still in the rut of like, you would spend the first 20 hours of that game just seeing a million Geodudes and Zubats, and like it would get very repetitive, and it was hard to catch Pokemon because they would just give you so many of the same Pokemon. And then I think the big breakthrough was X and Y, which really started to get better at Pokemon variety and added the experience share. Now you get to Pokemon Sword and Shield. You have that experience share there, just it's universal across the board. It's nothing to toggle. It's just everybody in your party gets experience points all the time. Great. That was also in Let's Go. They've added the Let's Go thing of you can see Pokemon on the overworld. No more random encounters. You choose when you're getting into a battle, and if you know you are looking for a Pikachu on this route, and you know the Pikachu lives on this route, you don't have to go run around in a field of grass for 20 minutes waiting for a Pikachu to appear. You can run around in a field of grass and look at all the Pokemon who are appearing, and if it is a Machop, or if it is a something else, a Sandshrew, I don't think Sandshrew's in this game, but if there's another Pokemon, you don't have to battle. He might be, I don't know. But
I'm gonna look this up.
You don't have to battle. You can.
I'm gonna be fucking offended if Sandshrew is not in this game.
But
Sandshrew's
there are a lot of Pokemon that aren't in it. There's like 900 Pokemon and 400 are in the game. So anyway, yes, you can just pick your Pokemon and you can fight it. If you want to do a little random encounter, there are still Pokemon that will run around on the map and you can't see what they are, so you can be surprised. But you always initiate encounters. And I think you put all that together, you add in the wild area, which I think is genuinely one of the most inspired things Pokemon has ever done. And I think people who say Sword and Shield is sort of just another normal Pokemon game are really selling it short for the wild area, if nothing else. Because the wild area is this big open world that is in the center of the map. You can access it really early on. Nothing is truly closed off to you except portions that are over water. You can go in there and battle anything. Early on, obviously, you're not going to be able to beat a level 50 Pokemon or catch it, but you can go and look at everything. You can kind of sequence break a little bit if you want to. And as the game goes along and you unlock more and more and your Pokemon gets stronger, the wild area, you get to keep going back and finding new Pokemon and challenging new strong Pokemon and like pushing yourself all the way to the end game where they make a hugely smart decision, which is once you have become the champion every single Pokemon in the wild area just jumps up to level 60. And you have a giant area where every Pokemon is level 60, and it means it's very easy to go level there. You can, if you want a really strong Zigzagoon, you do not have to go catch a level 5 Zigzagoon and level it to level 60. You can just go catch a level 60 Zigzagoon. They've got all sorts of new Pokeball types that make it easier to catch stuff. Like, one of the best innovations in this game is the Quick Ball, which is if you throw it your first turn in a battle, it has a really high chance to just catch the Pokemon, so it makes it really easy to catch a ton of wild Pokemon if you want to go do that. I think they've made a lot of other just smart little changes, like flying is not something you have to unlock anymore. It is basically just fast travel on the map. They have removed, the HMs have been gone for a while, but they've even removed the solution they did in Sun and Moon where you have different Pokemon along for the ride who do different jobs. Now you just have a cool bike, and the bike gets a bunch of upgrades, and instead of having to, use the move Surf to go over water, the bike just goes over water and stuff like that. So, it's a very frictionless Pokemon experience that feels like it is really inviting you to catch as many Pokemon as you want, train them really easily, and then go fight them, and there's some good, significant challenge later in the game as well, which I was impressed by. You also have all of your boxes with you at all times. That's another thing they brought over from Let's Go. So, for me at least, this is the first Pokemon game where I was not training just one team. I've been training, 50 Pokemon simultaneously, because you can bring them in and out. There's also something kind of like Digimon Story, where you can send your Pokemon off to go train on their own. It's called Pokejobs. You do it at the Pokemon Center, and there's one of these that's really powerful where you can send up to 30 Pokemon from your boxes to go do a job. They will get experience based on how long you let them out for. You can have them gone for up to 24 hours of real time, and then they'll come back and they'll have gained 50,000 experience points, and they'll level up a bunch, and that makes it, again, frictionless. And then I think you add on to that, the game has a really beautiful world to look at. I think it's a lovely game. I think the world could stand to be a little bigger. It feels pretty small for a Pokemon region. It doesn't feel like I'm out there exploring and getting lost as much as I would in some of the early games, but I still like the world a lot. The towns look really cool. And then I think the story kind of snuck up on me. It is one of the most narratively stripped down Pokemon games. Mostly the story is, for the first half at least, is you going through the 8 gyms, and it is basically pitched as a big sporting event this time. And so it's you are a sports competitor doing all of this. But I really like that. I think the characters are really strong, and they don't seem that way at the start, but as you go through the game, I really got to like some of these characters, and I think they have interesting arcs. There is your rival in this game is a character named Hop, and it sort of follows from a lot of the recent Pokemon games where the rival is not an asshole a la Gary Oak. He is your buddy, and usually I find that kind of boring. With Hop, they kind of turn it into something interesting thematically where Hop really wants to be the champion, but he's your rival, so every couple hours in the story, you completely have to trounce him, right? You have to completely just shit on him and all his Pokemon, and they've narrativized it, where Hop gets sad and dejected because of this, and he ultimately comes up with a whole new career trajectory, and I was kind of surprised. I think Hop is kind of the heart and soul of this game. And then there's so many other good little things. I think the Dynamaxing is really cool. It is really there less a strategic element than for making certain moments feel like big set pieces, and I think that's really smart. It makes the gym challenges feel like big, exciting set pieces that are different than a normal battle, and that's the first time I think that's ever really been done in Pokemon. And then the number one thing I have to praise Sword and Shield for is the soundtrack to this fucking game slaps so ridiculously hard. It is one of the best soundtracks of the year. It is the best soundtrack Pokemon's ever had. It is the most kind of out there experimental soundtrack. It's got echoes of Splatoon, of Persona, of Digimon Story, of Animal Crossing in places. It's all this different stuff. I played as our theme song this week the Gym Challenger theme, the Gym Leader Challenge theme, and that is one of my favorite JRPG battle themes of all time. It's incredible. And I think it just adds to this kind of sense of attitude and style and tone that I did not know this game would have, and I'm impressed it does. And as one final thing, I just need to praise the lineup of Pokemon in the game is so good. All of the new Pokemon are great. I think it's easily the best batch of new Pokemon they've had since Gen 2. And then I think they've made really good selections from all the other generations so that most of the Pokemon you're getting in this game are the cream of the crop, really cool creatures. The cuteness factor is on overload. You've got your little dog Pokemon. They've got a bunch of cool birds in this one. Zigzagoon totally glowed up and has a new evolution called Obstagoon, which is like if Zigzagoon was a fucking biker gang, and it's awesome. There's a bird Pokemon called Corviknight, which just straight up looks like a Dark Souls boss. I'm really impressed by every inch of this game, and I'm amazed by how much I liked it. It's one of the best games of the year, and I think if you have just been hearing all the negative hype from idiots on the internet, this is a great Pokemon game, and it is a Pokemon game. If you are a lapsed Pokemon fan but would like to one day play Pokemon again, I think this is the one for you. I honestly think this fixes a lot of issues people have had with Pokemon. No, it does not completely overhaul the battle system and make it a completely new game, but it goes further towards that than I think you might expect. It's a really good game.
I mean, honestly, the biggest thing is that it sounds like they have finally just figured out that the way that 99% of people play Pokemon is they basically just level up their starter and maybe one other Pokemon because it's too much of a hassle to try to play it any other way. And it's like it has taken them like 20 fucking years basically to get to the point to realize, oh, like if we make it so that it's easier to level up different Pokemon and you make it easier to switch Pokemon in and out of your party, that means that people are going to want to catch more Pokemon and play with more Pokemon and see what that's like, because I'm, someone who every time I would start to play a Pokemon game or try to replay one, I would go in with the intention of like, okay, this time I'm really going to make up a team of 6 Pokemon and I'm going to like try to catch as many Pokemon as I can. And inevitably about halfway through the game, I would just give up on it because it's too much effort when the game doesn't do anything to reward you for playing that way. Because if I just played with Charmander and leveled up like one other thing that's good against water, I can steamroll everything in the game because I'm just going to out-level every single challenge with my Charizard. And then just finally saying, we're just going to give experience to all of your Pokemon, make it easy to get Pokemon in and out, and then, as you said, also make it much easier to catch Pokemon with intentionality. Instead of just like you stumbling into random Pokemon, you can like decide, oh, I can see which Pokemon are on the screen, and then instead of having to fight 5 million Zubats before I can get a Jigglypuff or something, I can just like avoid all of those random battles I don't want to deal with, which that's a lot of the stuff that both of us really liked about Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth, is that in that game, it's really, really easy and addicting to level up different Digimon, and that game's evolution system was basically that version of, oh, that's how you get all the different Digimon in the game, is you just evolve a bunch of Digimon in different interesting directions, and that made that system so rewarding. I'm really heartened to hear that Pokemon has finally figured that out, because that was probably the number one thing, honestly, for me, above everything else, that frustrates me about Pokemon.
100%. And, like, to be clear, X and Y made several of these changes, and X and Y was really fun because of that for me. And then Sun and Moon is a very stale, I don't like that one much at all. But then, like, I feel like they've put all the like, X and Y kind of put some of the pieces on the board, and then Sword and Shield finished the puzzle. All of the pieces I kind of want are there, and again, totally frictionless. I'm going to complete the Pokedex. I'm very, like, I want to do that. I've never done that in a mainline Pokemon game, but I did it last year for Let's Go, and I feel like Let's Go was a really important stepping stone because they've added a bunch of the improvements from that here. So, there will be 2 Pokemon games on Switch in 2 years that I will probably have completed the Pokedex in, and that to me says an awful lot in the ways you're saying, Sean, because I had the exact same frustrations for a long time.
Well, Jonathan, let me tell you that if you do complete your Pokedex, let me tell you a couple Pokemon, apparently, that you're not going to have. You're not going to have Sandshrew or Sandslash. They are not in the game, which is hot fucking bullshit. The Nidorans are not in there. Jigglypuff. Jigglypuff's not in that game. No Jigglypuff. Interesting choice. Psyduck. No Psyduck. Abracadabra and Alakazam. Cut. They cut Abracadabra and Alakazam, Jonathan.
Are you a Dexit person now, or are you going to go harass game?
Apparently I am. I think I had just always assumed when I heard that they had cut a lot of Pokemon that they just put the 150 in stone. Maybe you cut a couple of the 150. But there's a big list. Geodude and the Geodude evolutions are gone.
No,
Slowpoke
is in there, so isn't Onyx it?
Onyx is not a Geodude.
Oh, right.
No, it's Geodude, Graveler, and Golem. Onyx is a different one. Slowpoke's gone. Doduo and Dodrio. Can
I defend this for a second? To be clear,
yeah.
Nintendo put out a game on Switch 12 months ago with every one of these Pokemon. It's called Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. It's right there if you want to go play it. I understand not all those Pokemon are accessible in Sword and Shield. I am okay with them breaking a couple of eggs. Like, the original 150 have been very well represented for a long time. Part of the joy of this one for me, Sean, especially having just played Let's Go last year, is I'm discovering all the new ones unique to Galar, but also a lot of the best of from, I would say, Gens 4, 5, 6, and 7 that I had not had a ton of experience with. And I'm okay that not all that, like, the 150, this is Generation 8. We can let go a little bit. It's okay. It is a little weird that Charizard is the only starter from Gen 1. Bulbasaur and Squirtle are not in this one. That one is the one that strikes me as a little weird, but I'm okay with it.
Well, Justin, you're definitely right that they had to break a few eggs, because Execute and Executor and Chansey, all three of the main egg Pokemon from the 150, not there apparently. For me, this is where I start to feel a little bit personally offended with these three. Cubone is not there. No Cubone. Fuck off. No Cubone. You can go fuck yourself. Scyther. No Scyther. No. That's not okay. You can't cut. It's Scyther. How'd you cut Scyther? What the fuck? And then Dratini, Dragonair, and Dragonite. No. That's not. This is not acceptable. Especially if they just put them in the Let's Go game. That all that game development is saying that this is in this, right? It's easy. You just copy and paste the files. I do it all the time on my computer.
Well, now you're being facetious, but yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I honestly, yes, there are obviously Pokemon I would like in this game that are not there. I also think Game Freak being willing to say for the first time we are prioritizing other things over balancing 900 Pokemon is probably what allows Sword and Shield to be as good as it is.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they had to do something at some point. I just don't think that something had to include cutting Cubone.
So, I mean, honestly, Sean, the game you want to play is Let's Go, because most of the improvements I'm talking about are in Let's Go, and you get all of your favorite Pokemon. So, I actually think you would like those games. They're a lot of fun. But Sword and Shield, even better. Great Pokemon game. One of my favorite games of the year. And yeah, you know, I've been thinking about it a little bit in comparison with Fire Emblem Three Houses, which I think is a lot of people's favorite Switch game of the year, and I totally get it, but I have documented this on the podcast, some of my disappointment with Three Houses, and I think Three Houses to me was kind of, it was hailed as like a reinvention of Fire Emblem, and it wasn't. It was a, I think, very heavy coat of paint on Fire Emblem that sort of obfuscated a lot of what Fire Emblem does well mechanically. Sword and Shield is not a reinvention of Pokemon, but I think it is I think it is more of a reinvention of Pokemon than Fire Emblem Three Houses was a reinvention of Three Houses. It's just, it looks more like it's a coat of paint. So it's a weird kind of situation here where I think Three Houses got too much credit for what it did, which I think was ultimately kind of self-defeating and shallow. And I think Sword and Shield is not getting enough credit for how much it has done to really hone in on what is the fun factor of Pokemon? What is the core gameplay loop? And it has refined it to a degree that, like, I'm shocked that my in-game clock is 43 hours. It does not feel like that. That has been very effortless. That has not been me sitting down feeling like I have to grind. That is just me having fun with the game for a couple of hours here and there throughout the week. It's really amazing to me. I did not expect to enjoy it this much. So there you go. And also the legendaries are fucking rad as shit. Zacian and Zamazenta are just two big fucking dogs. One of them's got a big fucking sword. One of them's got a big lion mane that turns into a shield. It's awesome. Yeah.
Cool.
So, but that's Pokemon. Pretty easy to get your head around. You fight monsters, you capture monsters, you battle monsters.
Yeah.
Sean, what the fuck is Death Stranding? Should I play it? Do you play? What is it?
Okay, so yeah, let's start from the basics of what is it before we go anywhere else. So it's the new game by Hideo Kojima and Kojima Productions, which is the first game he's made that is not a Metal Gear game in like maybe 15 to 20 years. I think the last one would have been like Boktai on the GBA. So he's been shackled to the Metal Gear franchise for a very, very long time. Obviously had his whole falling out with Konami. Then decided, okay, I'm going to leave Konami, start my own studio. It has a deal with Sony, so it's currently a PlayStation exclusive, although I think they've announced that 505 Games is going to publish a PC version at some point next year. So if you don't have a PlayStation, but you do have a good PC, you can still get this game. You're just going to have to wait a little bit for it. And like what we saw of Death Stranding for a long time was just these like really weird but really compelling trailers. And we talked about multiple times on the podcast how that's the thing we were most excited about, was just seeing these fucking ridiculous ass trailers, and kind of didn't even really care whether or not a video game ever came out of it. Which is interesting because I will say about the first 2 hours of this game, Jonathan, are just those trailers. Like, if you've watched those trailers are include all the way back to the announcement trailer. Those cinematics are beat for beat the exact same. So the first 2 hours of this game are really weird because you just like, obviously there's other stuff in there that's like stitching those together, but you come up to a thing of like, wait, this shot's really familiar. Oh, right, this is that trailer from like 2 years ago. And then like 15 minutes later, you went, oh, this is the trailer from TGS 2018. I remember that weird trailer. Oh, right.
I am kind of glad to hear they're all integrated into the game, because there's some really good stuff in all of that.
Yeah, the opening game of the game is like very, very cinematics heavy, and you've seen most of the cinematics just without all the connective material because they're just the trailers. The main gameplay loop, and what I would say the game is primarily, is it is a delivery game. It is a game about you going to a location, picking up an order or a set of orders for items for you to take to another location in the game. You pile the items up on your back. You create, if you have access to different tools and schematics, you create different tools like ladders, ropes, bikes, trucks. You can get vehicles and stuff later on that you think will help you carry your packages to where you need to go, and then you go to where you need to take those packages, deliver them. Usually you'll have like multiple different packages going to multiple different locations, so you kind of go on big loops and routes, and as you drop off packages, usually you pick up other packages. And if all you're doing was just doing the delivery stuff, like you could just do that almost on like an infinite loop if you wanted to, and just go around to all the different places, picking stuff up, going around, dropping stuff up, picking new items up. And as you do that, you get access to new different kinds of schematics and progress in the story of the game and move to different locations. And that's basically the main loop. The primary gameplay mechanics of the game are about logistics in creating equipment, managing like weight loads and stuff like that. If you are familiar with like encumbrance from Skyrim or Bethesda games, this is like encumbrance made as a primary sort of like tool, as a game mechanic that you have to really deal with. How much stuff do you have on? Like, are you carrying a bunch of light packages or a couple of very heavy packages? Because the difference between that means moving around the world will feel slightly different. Like, it's not like it's a completely different traversal mechanics, but you can they're pretty well tuned, and you can sort of feel the character swaying one way or the other depending on how your kind of backpack is loaded up with just ridiculous amounts of bullshit. And then the other parts of the game are, it has a very ridiculous story that sometimes is kind of intriguing, is usually just hitting you over the head with a giant bat that has the word theme written on it, which Kojima has in his corner of his office, I just assume. And then occasionally you deal with just like really mediocre, disappointing action stealth gameplay, which is probably the worst part of the game so far. But in its basics, that is more or less what Death Stranding is.
And it's interesting. Because I have heard this from other people too. The main loop actually does sound fun to me. It sounds like something I would like to play. The reason I have not played it yet is because it's an extremely long game. And I can play an extremely long game like Pokemon on my Switch, where I can just kind of put in time while doing other things. But like sitting at my TV, I just have not had time. Like the even like with Halo on my Xbox, I'm only halfway through, and it's been out for a week. And if I wanted to, I probably could sit down and play Reach in a day. But I have not had time to do that. So that's why I have not played Death Stranding yet.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I was thinking about picking it up until I saw one reviewer say it took them 80 hours to beat, and I was like, nope, bye. Sorry, not that curious. So how long have you put into it? Because it sounds like this game has a pretty variable length, but it is a big game.
Yeah, I would say I would not be surprised if you said I'd put maybe 40 hours. Like when you said that with Pokemon, that sounds about right of probably what I've done with Death Stranding, maybe a little bit less than that. I have not been mainlining the story, because that's the reason why there's like variable lengths on the playtime, is that it is not a particularly difficult game. I'm playing it on hard, mostly because I read that if you play it on hard, you get certain unlocks faster, because it kind of gives you more. It's not exactly experience, but more or less this game's equivalent of experience points, so you don't have to necessarily do as many deliveries to kind of level stuff up. But more or less each different sort of place you can take packages to is associated with some sort of character. I say character in like sneer quotes because they don't really have characterization other than like, this is the doctor, and he is a doctor, and he has like 6 lines of dialogue that are vaguely about being a doctor. But as you go to them and you deliver packages, they have a star thing that levels up to a maximum of 5 stars. And once you get them to 5 stars, usually at each star interval, you will get some kind of item. If it's a good, you'll get some like new schematic you can create that is actually useful. Usually it's just some kind of bullshit, and I wish that they told you what you would get for leveling up which person, because I've just started looking up online, because some of them are like so pointless, and other ones give you items that are like completely game changing. It's like, oh shit, if I had had access to this 5 hours ago would have been 30 minutes ago, because of how much it would have expedited a certain process. But that's sort of like the main thing. If you are spending a lot of time playing the game, that's the main thing you're doing, is going back along the same routes you've already been on, only in more efficient ways, because you've built out like the infrastructure to help you traverse those areas, and leveling up those stars to like kind of max them out. And whenever you max out 5 stars with a specific person, they then give you like a little star thing that it goes on your like costume. So you see it's like on his leg, he just starts building like this ring of stars around his legging. That is kind of a cool like visual indicator of, oh, like I've finished this one and I can focus on these other ones. So I have been doing a lot more of that side stuff than honestly I usually plan to do, because the game is very addictive. There is a certain amount of like, in a way that kind of reminds me of Metal Gear Solid 5, of that there's always this like little carrot on the stick of, oh, if I can just run this package really quickly. And it's that thing of like, if you remember Metal Gear Solid 5, they had the like Fulton thing of where you take enemy troops and stuff like that, and they become part of your base. And that, in the first like half of that game, that was this incredibly addictive system that like kept me like playing that game longer than I was intending to. And I'm concerned with Death Stranding that I might be hitting a point that is similar to the point I hit with MGS5, where those systems turned in a really bad way and became so cumbersome and addicting in pushing me through material that I didn't actually want to do. And I think I'm getting a little bit better at like seeing that that's happening and like trying to pull away from the game a little bit, because that was one of the main things that really destroyed Metal Gear Solid 5 for me. Was it made me realize that like, oh, I actually am not having fun like assaulting this like specific base for the 7th time or whatever, and getting this like little doodad, because that game got so repetitive. And Death Stranding feels like it was made by the same team that made Metal Gear Solid 5 in a number of ways, and that's one of them. The whole overall infrastructure, the like plethora of items that you get access to, and like half of them are ones you're never going to use. I have no idea why you would ever use a smoke grenade in this game. You get smoke grenades. I literally don't know why you would ever use them, because the game is never hard. It's not hard to traverse areas that you would use smoke grenades to sort of deceive enemies. So it's got that element to it that I think sometimes is very fun and engaging, of like, yes, I want to go to the next thing, deliver the next package, like deal with the next challenge. And then sometimes I end a gameplay session feeling just utterly fatigued with, oh man, I played like one more hour of this game than I intended to, and in a way that made me feel bad when I stopped playing it. And that is something to know going in is it's like pull away when you start feeling that, which is what I'm doing now. Like I'm starting to get that sense of, okay, I need to just move on to the next area because I do not want to drive down this road for the 12th time or whatever, deliver like this pair of underwear to this guy or whatever. You end up doing the challenges enough frequently and you get the route down incredibly efficiently that it's not burdensome to go do these deliveries. And because in some ways it's not burdensome, it's no longer engaging, and you have to, as a player, pull away from the game systems that are encouraging you to do that because the game over encourages you to play it. And I can definitely see some people burning themselves out on this game very hard. In a way that very well, the next time we have a podcast, that might be what I say. In 20 hours more of this game, I might just be like nope, like fucking, I burned myself so hard on this game because the superstructure of upgrades and things around this game is so clumsy and burdensome that it just hurts you as a player, which is my experience with MGS5. Hopefully that does not happen with Death Stranding, but I can sometimes feel myself on the precipice with that kind of stuff.
But do you like it? I guess that's my question. Are you enjoying
it? Yes, fundamentally yes. It is, and it did like. I feel like at different times you asked me this, I'll be less confident with that answer. I had a really good gameplay session last night and earlier today that like I feel very positive on. That I've moved to a very different area. I'm up in the mountains for people who've played the game or are playing the game, curious where I am. I'm in the snowy mountain area where you get access to these zip lines. And the zip lines are awesome. It's a really great way that they change up the gameplay dynamic of, for most of the game, a lot of it is you trying to build up roads that are like prefab roads. Like when you are able to build stuff in this game, it's not like Minecraft. You're not just able to like put like blocks anywhere and build unique creations. You have a little thing you have that creates a certain set of prefab structures like a watchtower, a charging station, a zip line, a post box, things like that are just like pre-made things. And then there are also like pre-made routes in the world that have these things called auto pavers that you just bring like chunks of materials like metals and things that you get at different locations. And when you hit a certain limit with them, it just creates a big stretch of road that is partially shared between different gameplay stuff because this is a sort of light multiplayer element of that you see different players' creations in the world when you're walking around, and then those auto pavers are shared between certain numbers of players, so you're all kind of contributing resources to build up that road. And for a huge chunk of the game, that is kind of the main way you are sort of increasing your efficiency in delivering items, is trying to build up the road structure in a certain area, which that kind of becomes fairly tedious. But once you get the zip lines are much more player motivated because you're just creating a network of different like posts basically that then fling you from one area to the next. And there's like a certain distance limit. So it's very fun climbing up the mountain and being like, okay, there's that peak. If I put a zip line there to that peak, that'll connect to this zip line. And you're like building this kind of complex network that once you have it done between a certain set number of locations, you can just send packages so quickly because you just zip, 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 pick up packages here, zip, 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 drop them off, pick up new packages, zip, zip, like go to the third location, and you're just like zipping around. And in like an hour, you can like 5-star a bunch of people, which is basically what I did earlier today. And that was very satisfying because setting up those zip lines initially is really difficult because you're trudging through snow. It almost has like a Breath of the Wild feel with like managing your stamina, climbing around on things. Like when you're in the deep of the mountains in the snow and you're running out of stamina and you don't have a lot of equipment left, like it is a pretty stressful, like intense, really fun gameplay experience. And then the reward for doing that, of having then trudged through those mountains, gone through really hard pathways to set up zipline stations that then allow you to just completely like move past and avoid every single difficulty in that area of the game. That is a really satisfying, really fun gameplay loop. And It's made extra better because the zip lines are not just like here's like 2 sticks in the ground with like a rope between them or whatever. It's here's this big giant metal post with like a metal ring on top with like glowing energy in it, and it bends down and you reach your hand into the glowing energy with a little like sphere and lift up into the air, and it shoots like a like energy line between the zip line stations that then you just like shoot across. It is a very cool zip line that makes a very fun sound. And your character, Sam, Norman Reedus, is just like, woohoo, yeah, when he's going between zip lines. And it is so far the best part of the game. And that's probably why I'm like really high on it right now in terms of that stuff, is because those zip lines are super kick-ass.
Yeah.
I would say maybe kind of push through some of Chapter 3 is really, really long. Maybe push through Chapter 3 a little bit faster than I did and get to when you get the zip lines, because the zip lines
and all of what you're describing, the main gameplay loop of delivery and setting things up and like getting through, that sounds like catnip to me. That's the kind of thing I really enjoy in games, and it's why
I think you'd really like that
I
stuff.
really want to play that, and it sounds like the kind of thing where Kojima at his best is... He is a brilliant game designer. He is really good at coming up with compelling gameplay loops. Metal Gear Solid 3, 5, Peace Walker. I think, if you look at like his best ones, like there's, even if some of the stuff around it we don't like as much, like there's some really compelling gameplay stuff. And this sounds like, especially because he's not having to do the Metal Gear thing exactly and is getting to do new stuff, this sounds really fun and interesting to me. And if you also get to watch some, I don't know, weird avant-garde cutscenes every so often where he hits you over the head with a theme bat, I'm okay with that, once in a while. I'm a little worried about the inevitable point when it probably becomes all story all the time and is terrible, but...
Yeah. So let's talk about that side of the game a little bit more. Man, the story in this game... Like, I will say that I think the world they've built is interesting. I think the main story is really sloppy so far. Especially like past the first 2 hours where they're setting everything up and they're kind of establishing the world and they're showing you those trailers, but you have more context for it so you understand what's happening. That part of the story is like really engaging. And then the story becomes very sparse. And again, in a very Metal Gear Solid 5-esque way, of that you will go like 10 hours without getting any real main story content. And then you get another cutscene. And sometimes those cutscenes like give you a little like something extra bit of story stuff. You're like, okay, that kind of sounds interesting. Oftentimes it just reminds you of like how thuddingly clunky the dialogue is in this game. And I think like a lot of the main writing is just like... I think it has this Kojima quality of I very rarely believe that these characters would say the things that are coming out of their mouths, right? Like, Metal Gear Solid would have you believe that Solid Snake is this super cool badass soldier, and then everything he says is the stupidest shit.
I know what you're thinking
world,
of.
Right?
I know you're thinking of Metal Gear Solid 2 when he starts doing the Kurt Russell references.
Yeah, it's like he starts making fucking, Escape from New York references, calling himself Iroquois Pliskin. It's also all over, like, Metal Gear Solid 1, where it's like, the idea is that he's a Clint Eastwood-esque, action hero guy who's like a man of few words, but Solid Snake in those games never shuts the fuck up, and he just comes across as this massive fucking loser. And that's always how I felt about Solid Snake, which proves... true, because also, by the time you get to Metal Gear Solid 4, you realize that Solid Snake has never done anything productive in the main plot of that whole franchise, and he dies a fucking failure, never having actually fought against the Patriots, who are the actual villains, and it just feels like Kojima just forgot about that shit. So if you're like me, and you're someone who is frequently just annoyed and frustrated, and kind of gets pissed off by a lot of the storytelling stuff that Kojima does in Metal Gear, Death Stranding has a lot of the same kinds of things. I will say... At the very least, so far, nothing has been anywhere near beyond the pale like Quiet was in Metal Gear Solid 5. There is some, like, uncomfortable stuff with the female characters, but it's more at, like, a Metal Gear Solid 1 or 3 level. It's not at 5, which is, like, the absolute most ridiculous shit. 4 is really bad. 2 has all the shit with Otacon's sister, which is awful. Nothing has been at that level yet. It's probably a little bit above MGS3 or MGS1 on the, like, how gross does this feel
I don't know
scale.
if it's possible to hit the Metal Gear Solid 2 Otacon's sister thing again. I think that's the ceiling, basically. Without going into, like, full-on, like, using, like, slurs and, like, just being openly misogynist. That's the ceiling of, like, the weird, casual... dyed-in-the-wool sexism of Kojima's games.
Yeah, like that stuff in Metal Gear Solid 2 is the part that like the larger video game culture has just like erased from their memory. The only parts of that game that people remember is the opening with the Solid Snake, some of the stuff about Raiden, and the ending of that game. That's the only thing anyone remembers. And there's all this shit about a vampire and fucking Otacon's backstory and his sister that just like everyone just conveniently forgets about whenever we talk about how Metal Gear Solid 2 is a masterpiece, apparently. So luckily it's not as bad as some of Kojima's storytelling stuff has been in that sense. But it does have a lot of the, like, everything that he's talking about is so surface level while trying to pretend like it's very deep in a way that gets very annoying. People, like, talk for so much longer than they should about certain, like, topics. And I feel like... So I should just talk about like what the story actually is before I get into any deeper criticism. So you play as Norman Reedus playing as Sam Porter. No, sorry, his name is not Sam Porter Bridges. His name is Sam Strand. So you, in the first 2 hours, you find out that your character Norman Reedus is Sam Strand, who is the son of the last president of America, who is Bridget Strand, Yeah, the name.
Great. I wish he was just called Sam Stranding. I wish it was just full on like, this is Death Stranding with your buddy Sam Stranding. It's so close, and I don't know if it would be stupider or less stupid to just call him Sam Stranding.
Yeah, no, I mean, nobody actually calls him Sam Strand. Everyone calls him Sam.
But Sean, it would be like if, you know how people make the joke that Liam Neeson's character in Taken is John Taken? It would be like, that's what this is. That would be like if he was playing John Taken in Taken.
Well, again, so let me just run down some of the characters. So you have Sam Porter Bridges. The reason why everyone calls him Sam Porter Bridges is because I guess people in this world just start become named after their professions, because he's a porter, which is for a transporter, and he works for a company called Bridges, which was set up by his mother, Bridget Strand, last president of America. That is no longer the United States of America. It's now the United Cities of America, the UCA. And Bridges is basically like UPS or something, only in this future, because you can't, like, infrastructure has fallen apart in America, and America just inexplicably looks like fucking Iceland now. I don't know why. Nobody's explained to me why America looks like Iceland now, but it just does. Like, if you've seen any of the trailers, you know what the environments look like. I have not seen an environment that does not look like that yet, so that's just what the game looks like as far as I know. And I played like 40 hours of this game. The most different it's gotten is that there's snow. Like, that's as extreme away from that aesthetic you've seen in the trailers is. And so, because the infrastructure has fallen apart in the UCA, they need people to deliver items from one place to another, and those people become kind of famous because of how difficult the job is. For whatever reason, that means that you are called Sam Porter Bridges by everybody because you've entered with a contract with Bridges. In the beginning of the game, in the first 2 hours, you reconnect with your mother, Bridget Strand, who Sam calls Bridget for some reason. I don't know why he just calls his mom by her first name. It's very weird. It creeps me out every time he does it. And she gives you this mission that you have to go from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast of America, which, don't worry, apparently that's not as far as it seems, because it's not like you're traveling between different zones, really. You do that once from like a small tutorial zone, but then the main area of the game is just one big contiguous area. But every time you connect different things up to this network, it shows you a map of America and where you are. And somehow I've gone from like Kentucky to like fucking Nevada. I don't know how I've like traversed this a tremendous length of America that would take you like a day to drive nonstop. It's fucking absurd. I've gone so far. But yeah, they just kind of ignore that bit of how big America is. So you have to go from the East Coast to the West Coast. At some point in the past, your sister, Amelie Strand, who is also played by Lindsay Wagner, both your mother and your sister are played by Lindsay Wagner, with the mother being like normal, like modern day Lindsay Wagner, and the sister is like Bionic Woman Lindsay Wagner, because, I don't know, symbolism or something, maybe, I don't know. So Amelie is currently on the West Coast. I guess she failed to connect. I don't actually understand why, like, we have to do the same thing again. Some people, I guess, just didn't hook up to this network, because you have the super internet, which is the chiral network, which is the internet, but you can send stuff through it better, I guess. I don't know. And you have to go hook up the different cities and people to this network, and you basically have to hook them, like, set up their internet for them, with like a magical keychain of USB sticks, more or less. And as you go across America, you hook people up to the internet. As you try to go to the West Coast to meet up with your sister, who also, I guess, has been captured by terrorists, but the terrorists let her communicate with you through a hologram, and that's not been explained, and nobody's questioned why the terrorists are just letting her, like, freely talk to people on, like, the phone, more or less. That part of the game has not been revealed, and I feel like it's going to be stupid when I find out what it is, because it feels like it's just going to be stupid. The reason why all this has happened, like why it's so hard to transport stuff and all that, is that at some point in the past, an event occurred called the Death Stranding. So that if you want them to have a bunch of title drops in this game, don't worry, they do. People talk about the Death Stranding all the time. And it's where the world of the living and the world of the dead have kind of fused, or it's like possible to travel from one to the other. So when people die, they become ghosts called BTs, which stands for beached things, because you just have to have a lot of ridiculous nouns in this game. And BTs are the weird, like, invisible hand prints on the ground with, like, tar filling up. You've seen in some of the trailers. That's what those are. And so when you die, you become a BT, and then BTs try to attack people and pull them to the other side. And when corpses are eaten by giant, like, BT monsters, a thing called a void out occurs, which is basically a giant nuclear explosion. They explain it as the dead things have antimatter in them, and that we're made out of normal matter, and so when they collide, they annihilate and cause a giant explosion. And so when the Death Stranding happened, there were just massive giant explosions all over America, or all of the world, almost simultaneously, and just destroyed society. And one of the first things you have to do is take a body to an incinerator, because you're worried that it's going to have a void out and would destroy the entire city it's in. So that's like one of the first missions in the game, is you taking that body to an incinerator, which is where one of the cutscenes from the trailers happens. And so that's kind of like the interesting backstory setup of the game, is that the ghosts and this sense of, like, you can't shoot people and kill them with guns, because you just be too afraid that the body would be eaten by a ghost and the fucking, like, city would explode, which is a fun idea that, like, the game doesn't actually do much with outside of some of the early cutscenes. And it's one of my problems with the world building, is I think the world building's really fascinating when it's all set up to you and you get, like, the really cool cutscenes from the trailers. And then when you actually engage with the BTs in gameplay, it's just really boring, like, kind of mediocre stealth stuff. That just feels like the game is not good at doing the stealth. The game, everything in the game feels like it's designed for you to be transporting things from one place to the other. It doesn't feel like the team took a lot of, like, care into building out, like, stealth mechanics. And so I usually just kind of try to drive past any BT area, because it's just annoying, and it's not a fun mechanic to engage with. So that element of the story and the world building and the setup does not work very well for me. You also have the baby on your chest. There's so much shit you have to explain in this game. The baby is called a BB. It's a bridge baby. The bridge babies are tools that can be used to detect BTs, because this is very a weird world building detail. Their mothers are, like, brain dead, and the babies were removed from their brain dead mothers. And so since the mothers are basically dead, the babies have, like, a connection to the other side. And they're, like, have one foot in the world of the living, one foot in the world of the dead, more or less. And, like, that stuff is not... I don't think they do a good job with that stuff. It just feels weird and kind of gross. And so that's what the baby is on your chest. The baby, every time you plug in the BB, you get a weird, like, flashback to something that Mads Mikkelsen's character does. I don't know what Mads Mikkelsen's character's name is yet. He hasn't been in it much. But he's just, like, you just get weird cutscenes with Mads Mikkelsen every time you plug BB into your thing. That's like, hey, here, BB, here's a picture of the world. Like, look how cool the world is. One day I'll show you the world. I have no idea what all that shit is about yet, but Mads Mikkelsen's very good. What else? There's so much shit in this game. Because also, here's a fun detail. Your main character, Sam, is immortal.
Oh, I didn't see that coming. Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So he can't die. They call them repatriates, and if Sam dies, and this is like, I haven't died other than the tutorial where they tutorialize this for you, where you have to die. When you die, your body or your soul gets sent to like a beach, like they call them beaches, is basically like where your like the other world is. But your soul can still travel back to the world of the living. And this is a detail has not been explained, that I assume there's some like fucking text file, because there's all kinds of weird collectible pickups with like text that explains all the random minutia bullshit of this world. But it seems like you just sort of like create somehow a new body back in the world. Because remember the first trailer for the game that has Norman Reedus waking up naked on a beach with the baby and all that shit? That's a cutscene in the game, and that's from when you die for the first time, you come back to life. And I guess he just made a new body, and that's just a new Norman Reedus body that his soul went back into, because I think his normal body would just be completely destroyed by all the shit that happened. So I don't know how the body is created, but you just can't die. You are literally immortal. And you also have a thing called Dooms, which is an acronym that nobody has told me what the acronym stands for yet. And people with Dooms have the ability to sense BTs, but some people with Dooms are more powerful Dooms people than you, and they can actually see them, not just sense them. And then some of them can also teleport somehow, and they have like superpowers, and that part has not been particularly explained. So there's a lot of weird like detail in the world building that feels like sometimes to me very excessive, and like it sometimes it feels like they have decided to create elaborate explanations for things that do not need an explanation because it's a video game and you just accept it. And sometimes that just bogs shit down. And so there are just instances where the game spends so much time sending you text files and spinning dialogue and cutscenes, and while you're like transporting stuff from one location to another, explaining to you like why this group of people wants to steal your packages. And it's just like, I don't care. Like, it's not, and it doesn't feel built into the world in a natural way. It feels over-explained. It feels over-justified. And it kind of, whenever the story comes front and center in Death Stranding, it really hurts the sense of like tone of the game, because the game generally feels incredibly somber. And then you just have people come in on the radio and just talk about ridiculous horse shit in a very Kojima way for like 5 minutes, when they could have said something for 5 seconds and you would have gotten it. And that, it's the classic Kojima gets in his own way all the time. And if he just like stepped back and wrote less, explained less, the game would stand on its own, and the narrative would stand on its own, and the characters could stand on its own. And he just like muddles it up constantly, and it's incredibly frustrating.
You know what this makes me think of is that I actually think a really interesting developer to compare to Kojima is Hidetaka Miyazaki, because he, who is the creator of Dark Souls, who is also, I think, similar to Kojima, obsessed with narrativizing video gamey things, right? Like, Dark Souls is all about narrativizing death and resurrection in video games. But Dark Souls never sits you down and formally does formal exposition for it. It just kind of like you start in an undead asylum. You have a weird knight who tells you about coming back. You have this hollow mechanic. Like, you get it sort of over time, and then it is tied into all the themes of the game. But they never have to like stop the game to tell you. Sekiro does more exposition, but it sounds like Sekiro actually does something extremely similar in terms of its death mechanic about a character who is immortal and can't die. But Sekiro also is very nimble on its feet in telling you that story, and also the exposition is cool because you have this gravelly Japanese dude telling you about it in an old temple, and he's like scratching stuff into the floor. But like, it's kind of like Miyazaki is like the minimalist Kojima in a lot of ways, and I feel like Kojima could learn a lot from that. And I mean, I'm sure he has played those games. I'm sure he's aware of it, and it's hard to imagine a minimalist Kojima because he is defined by his maximalism. But I agree that it holds him back.
Except for, it's not hard to imagine a minimalist Kojima, because the minimalist Kojima is the Kojima you get in the trailers, because you don't have all the bullshit around it. The trailers for his games are just like the good ideas he has condensed into like a 3-minute short film. And that's why the trailers were so compelling, because it's like, oh, this stuff is really interesting. when you don't have fucking fake Guillermo del Toro. Like so Guillermo del Toro's model is in the game. They scanned him in, but he doesn't voice the character. He plays Dead Man. Because there's Dead Man, there's Die Hard Man, there's I forget who the smart one is. Heartman. There's Heartman as well. So you've got all your different mans in the game.
So wait, Guillermo del Toro's voice isn't in the game?
No, it's someone who like vaguely sounds sort of like Guillermo del Toro. I just assumed that they couldn't get Guillermo del Toro in the studio because Dead Man has quite a bit of dialogue. He's more or less your Otacon.
Okay.
So he explains a lot of like the BB technology and all that kind of stuff to you. So that was probably just like Guillermo del Toro has his own projects he's working on. He's not like an actor. This is not the main thing he does, like a Norman Reedus. So he probably wants to go direct movies and stuff like that. It's it's appreciated that at least you get a look at Guillermo del Toro. It's a good looking Guillermo.
It's
del
funny,
Toro
Sean. We did a week on in my film studies class Latin American cinema. And so for my students, I was kind of telling them about... We watched a film by Alfonso Cuarón, and I was telling them about sort of these three major Mexican directors right now. Cuarón, González Iñárritu, and then Del Toro, who have been really big in film these last 10 years. And I was putting up a picture of each of them, and I really almost put in a picture of Del Toro holding the bridge baby. But it looked just off enough, and I thought it was like... I thought it could be read like as a disrespect, so I didn't do it, but I kind of regret it because I thought that would be funny. I didn't know if anyone would get the joke if I put in, like, it was going to be Cuarón holding his Oscar, Iñárritu holding his Oscar, and then Del Toro holding a bridge baby. I should have done it.
You should have just gone ahead and do it. You should definitely, if at any point you have called for putting a picture of Mads Mikkelsen up on the screen, you should use him from this game because their Mads Mikkelsen is scarily.
I noted in the trailers. I saw that definitely. Yeah,
it's like, especially because a lot of the Mads Mikkelsen cutscenes again are these like weird flashbacks with BB where you're seeing them from BB's perspective. So he's in like the tank, so there's like a watery kind of filter over it, which obscures some of the detail. And with that filter, there like the first time one of those cutscenes popped up, I thought for a second it was just full motion video. I thought this is just live action fucking Mads Mikkelsen because it looks so frighteningly good. It's probably the best simulacrum of a real life person I have ever seen in a game. Which if it's going to be of anyone, it should be of Mads Mikkelsen because that dude.
Mads Mikkelsen kind of feels like a cartoon character to begin with. Like Mads Mikkelsen does not seem like someone who was born. He seems like someone who was designed in a lab to be the perfect Mads Mikkelsen, basically.
Yeah, which honestly, I think the thing that makes me happiest about this game from a story perspective is I feel like Mads Mikkelsen might be the only actor in the world that can get on Kojima's wavelength. Everybody else in this game, like Norman Reedus does fine. I mean, Norman Reedus is a lot like Kiefer Sutherland in MGS5. He has very little to actually say. He mostly just sort of grunts and says gravelly stuff that's like, chiral network, and then that's the most kind of dialogue you get from him. But like he gives like Mads Mikkelsen, I think is probably going to end up ultimately being like the ultimate antagonist. Like there's been a little stuff that's kind of intimated that. I haven't had much with that character, but the stuff I have seen, like I think it's both Kojima has an intense respect for Mads Mikkelsen, which if you follow Kojima on Twitter, you will know that is true. And so he gives him like the best stuff to play, and Mads Mikkelsen is just willing to just like go for it, and he fucking just nails it. Like it's that is the only character for me that so far works really well. And again, it might largely be because that is so far I've only seen the minimalist version of that character. The only dialogue I've seen from him is like weird flashback scenes, and most of the stuff with him is very obscure and strange and has not kind of like entered the kind of like a plot level of just here's fucking Troy Baker monologuing at you, who's like his character's currently the antagonist in the game that I think is going to get replaced with Mads Mikkelsen at some point. And Troy Baker does fine. Like, Troy Baker does a good job because he's Troy Baker. The character that he plays, Higgs, is just like, this is just... You could replace this character with almost any Metal Gear Solid villain, and it would just be the exact same thing. It's just sort of hammy, over-the-top, whatever.
Sean, how much better would the 45-minute seminar at the end of Metal Gear Solid 2 be if Mads Mikkelsen was doing the voice acting?
Oh my god, he could fucking sell it. He's been asked to play some ridiculous bullshit and say some ridiculous bullshit in his life, and he could fucking... If anyone could do it, it would definitely be Mads Mikkelsen. But unfortunately, most of the people in this game are not Mads Mikkelsen, so most of the dialogue just is like... not great. Like, here's the thing about the story that I think frustrates me the most. And again, this has to come with the caveat that I haven't seen the game to its conclusion. The majority of the story stuff, if you know Kojima, is going to come at the end. And I say that caveat as both, there's a chance that it gets better, but most probably my very strong suspicion is that I'm going to hate the story by the time I get to the end. I'm going to have to force myself through the last 6 hours of this fucking game based on what I've heard about from the reviews and based on my own personal history with Kojima and his games. But right now, I think the biggest issue is the game is about strands. It's about connecting America. And about how society has fallen apart and people just live on their own and nobody is connected anymore by anything, with obvious parallels to the real world in those statements, right? And that's sort of the setup in the idea is that you have to connect America. One, I think using the word strand as the way to do that is there's a line or there's a scene with the sister character early on that is talking about the strand bullshit, and I feel like Kojima, I mean, obviously he's not a native English speaker. I feel like he doesn't realize that nobody uses the word strand as a synonym for bond. It's yes, ropes are technically made out of strands, but when you say that something is a strand of something, it makes it feel very flimsy and weak. And they keep on trying to use the word strand to say it's no, it's like a strand that's connecting America. Nobody uses the word strand that way. And it does not feel like that is an intentional play on words or something and it's supposed to be setting up no, it feels like he found out that the term for whales beaching themselves is a death stranding, and he said that sounds cool, we'll use that as a title for the game. And the word strand can mean these other things too, like a strand of rope. It's no, nobody ever talks about a strand of rope. That element, I think of it, is very thin and ill considered, and that scene just feels so bad.
I just imagining that Hideo Kojima learned his English from Moby Dick or something.
Yeah. It's just a weird, obscure word to have picked to be it's a strand game. This is the genre of strand games. It's just use the word bond. You're talking about bonds. It's
bonds
okay.
Of people are the true power.
Yes, I've played a JRPG before. I've read shonen manga. I've seen Dragon Ball. We get it. We know bonds between people. Yes, it's clear. You don't have to come up with a different English word for it. But so the main thing is that you're trying to reconnect America. And I think that it was a mistake to set this game in America in the first place, because the last thing that this game gives a shit about are the actual things that cause divisions in society. It's not like this game has anything to say about race or gender and sexuality or class and economics. It just doesn't, it's not a factor. It literally never comes up. There's one character in the game, Die Hard Man. I think Die Hard Man is black. Actually, to think about it, because he has a mask on his face, but I'm pretty sure Die Hard Man is black. And there's a couple of female characters like Mama and Fragile, because, women. Am I right? God, this fucking game. Oh, holy shit. But it's never interested in actually discussing the ways that society or culture becomes fragmented or divided in the way that it is currently in the world. And if you're a certain believer in political philosophies, has been forever in human history. And the game's just not interested in dealing with that. It's only interested in if you try hard and hook people up to the super internet, they'll just be happy. And it's if you just go deliver someone their stuff, they'll be oh, you seem like an okay guy, hook me up to the super internet and I'll join the UCA. And that's how you're rebuilding America. And there's the game sets up this idea for what it wants to be about, but is not in any way interested in actually executing on any of those ideas. And so the ideal version of this game would be one that is heavily interested in digging into politics and fractures in society and how those occur. And this game is not really interested in that. But I also think the very sort of shonen anime, very light version of that, I don't think it's very good at doing that either. I don't think it's not good at showing friendship and bonds between people overcoming an overpowering adversity. Maybe that's the stuff that'll come up more at the ending, because that would be more the place for it to come in. But there hasn't been a lot of opportunity to show that either. Your character Sam is so removed from the world The game feels like does not have the like budget of a Metal Gear game, so there's like cuts in places that make sense but also hurt the game a lot. Like, you never go into cities, you never see normal people walking around. Everyone you engage with is like a hologram that's like in some sort of shelter that you don't ever actually go into. And maybe if I give the game a lot of rope, if I give it a lot of strands, maybe that's not going to hang itself on. Like, ideally, that would be something that eventually there's a big turn and Sam learns to like connect with people because he's so removed from everybody as a character, and that's where you then get to engage with people more face to face, and the game actually makes that turn as a whole. I'm very skeptical of that occurring, but there is technically space for the story to get better at that stuff. But even if it gets better at that stuff, I never think is ever going to handle the material it vaguely tries to chew off anywhere near what it really should or it's kind of obligated to. You know, if you look at something like the Persona games, which are still like have like all those kind of shonen tropes about like bonds between people overpowering adversity and all that kind of stuff, all of those games are still really interested in how like the idea of the creation of a self prevents people from engaging in authentic relationships in Persona 4, or like in Persona 5, the ways that society creates roles for you and puts you into boxes that you have not made for yourself and that oppresses you and discriminates against you, that prevents you from being able to engage in authentic relationships in culture. Like, those games are really interested in digging into those problems while also having the more sort of like heartfelt kind of like childish or child-esque answer about friendship winning the day. And Death Stranding, I just don't feel like is ever going to be able to get to any of those places in a way that's going to be satisfying. And I just hope that it's merciful when that time comes. I hope it is short. I hope that it doesn't twist the knife in too many times, because I'm having really such a good time with the core gameplay mechanics and the core gameplay loop. Again, like, all the stuff I've done in the mountains has been like some of the most fun I've had in some ways with the game this year. Like the experience of trekking through the mountains and building up these zip lines has been so fun and so engaging, and there's been lots of stuff building up in like along the way that I've liked a lot. Barring some of the action and stealth and like boss fights, all that stuff is bad, but the core gameplay loop is so good. But the anxiety I have, as always, is like when does it happen? When does Kojima, as he always has, so reliably pull the rug out from under me and just stab me in the face? He throws away the bat that has the word theme on it and pulls out the 1,000 knives he has that has the word theme engraved on it, and just stabs you in the throat with it over and over again, which that feels like that's every Kojima video game ending he has ever made.
Metal Gear Solid 3 is the closest to a good ending with like that's on. I mean, it's got a great ending sequence driven by gameplay. It's not super cutscene heavy. I mean, Metal Gear Solid 3 is his best game, so that's kind of but
Yeah, 3 is definitely the one that gets the furthest away from that stuff.
It also has
3 was also
it's also the most homophobic one. Okay, so two questions, Sean, before we move on. One, is it true that instead of having water, Sam Porter Bridges just goes around with a canteen full of Monster Energy? Is that true, or did I dream that?
Yeah. Oh, it's true. Like, this is how bullshit this game is, like how much bullshit there is in it, that like it's impossible for me to like say all of it. And yes, if you hadn't heard yet, it is true. Your canteen is a canteen that like turns water into Monster Energy drink. And this is fresh in my mind because I just got the level 2 canteen, which turns water into Monster Energy drink even better than the old one did. And when you get it, because like you usually don't ever see the canteen because it's just an item like in your fucking like weapon wheel or whatever. And so when I got the level 2 one, I saw that it is actually like a little canteen with a little like glass thing window in it that you can see the green Monster Energy drink behind it. I'm like, what the fuck? And it is also true that when you go to your private rooms, which is the place you can go to in some of the bases to kind of regenerate your stamina and all of that, there's Monster Energy drink in those, and it is the most high-res, gorgeous-looking digital recreation of Monster Energy drinks. If there's two things in this game that are the most impressive graphical feats in a game that generally looks really, really good, it is Mads Mikkelsen and Monster Energy drink cans look really fucking realistic. too weird things for that to be what it is, but those are the two things that are most impressive to me about the aesthetics of this game.
Amazing. And number 2, I know you're not done with the game yet, but so far, do any female characters get a bomb lodged in their vagina and have to get it ripped out graphically on screen?
No, there has only been one cutscene so far that has like particularly what I would call like egregious Kojima like stuff with one of the female characters with Fragile. There's like kind of a flashback with Fragile where you learn a little bit about her backstory that I think is bad and poorly done. And
do you learn why she's fragile?
Kind of things. I think that's just her family name. I think her dad. I think her dad because she's the runner of like another like porter company. Like so, you have Bridges and then you also have Fragile. And I think her dad set up that company and created the word fragile because there was a whole speech about it that I'd forgotten about. Like he saw that the world was fragile, but we would fix it, so he named the company Fragile. There's some bullshit like that, and she just, I mean, because again, here's the thing: is it feels like Kojima had the idea, oh, I want a female character that's named Fragile, and then he has to spend like 30 minutes of the game justifying how you get to that point. In the same way that with Quiet, he just wanted to have a sexy bikini lady that never said anything, and he had to come up with, well, she breathes through her skin, and right? Like, it's the biggest problem with his writing is sometimes he comes up with awful ideas, sometimes he comes up with great ideas. Whether it's an awful idea or a great idea, very rarely do those ideas feel like they organically spring from the work of art he's created. They feel like separate things that he's jamming all into one big mush. And every single Kojima game has like 500 more themes than it actually knows how to deal with. It has like a dozen more characters in it than it actually knows how to develop. It's how you end up with having Metal Gear Solid 2 have this entire bizarre subplot about Otacon sleeping with his stepmother and his sister almost drowning in the pool, and like all that bullshit in MGS2, which has nothing to do with the rest of the game. Like all of those elements feel like they come from this place that Kojima has as a creator, which you can see in everything he's made that I've ever engaged with, that there's just too much stuffed in here without it being considered. How would this organically fit into the creation that I'm trying to put together? And so it doesn't make sense to me at all why in this world someone would go around and say, well, I'm just going to call myself Die Hard Man, and I'm going to call myself Dead Man. I'm going to call myself Mama, and I'm going to call myself Fragile, and me, I'm Sam Strand, but I'm actually Sam Porter Bridges. Like, nothing about the world feels like that's how those characters would have come to that conclusion and how they would have been set up. That just feels like Kojima came up with a bunch of character names and that he thought, like, themes. And then just made them character names, and that's how you end up there. And it's the thing that's most frustrating is you can see the good stuff. You can see that there's lots of cool, interesting ideas in there in terms of the narrative and the world building, and it's so jumbled under so much fucking horseshit, half of which I haven't even talked about on this podcast yet. We haven't even talked about likes in Twitter in the mules yet. I'm just not going to get into it. If you want to read up about that stuff, you can read up about that stuff. I think that's good.
Why don't we move on and finish today, Sean? Let's just do a quick check-in on The Mandalorian. Saving this for the end in case people don't want to be spoiled on episodes 4 and 5, but we did talk 2 weeks ago about the first 3 episodes of The Mandalorian on Disney+. There have been 2 more, and it's kind of been interesting because these 2, I think you're seeing the show settle into something like a TV format a little bit, in that it's kind of like each week is some adventure where the Mandalorian is somewhere new, and he's got to protect Baby Yoda, and he meets an interesting figure. But yeah, the episode 4 was basically the Seven Samurai episode, and episode 5 is basically the sort of gritty bounty hunter episode. I thought they were both very good. I thought episode 5 was particularly great. What did you think?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I liked both these episodes a lot. I liked episode 5 more than 4. I don't think either episode 4 or 5 are quite as good as 2 or 3 to me. But like, I one of the most fun things for me each week is on Friday watching Mandalorian. Like, it is such a good weekly TV show, that it like motivates me to watch it. And I think it's one of the reasons why I also like one of the few weekly TV shows I watch is like Doctor Who, is because each week I know I'm going to get like a good, satisfying, full story. Or like, maybe not every episode is going to be good, but at least they're going to try to tell me a full story, and it's not going to be like, here's B plot, C plot stuffed into the story in this episode and that kind of stuff. Each time I sit down to watch Mandalorian, it's like, okay, awesome. I can't wait to see what happens. I can't wait to see what awesome moment they're going to use for the musical sting near the end of the episode. Episode 5 has a very good one with Mandalorian discovering the dead lady, and then the reverse cut to her body with the musical sting. Mwah.
It's
perfect,
great.
Good, beautiful. The musical stings in this show are perfect, and I love them to death. And it's just the whole vibe and tone and pace of the show is just a breath of fresh air every time I watch it. It just feels like it feels very unique in the current like Western TV landscape to me in a way I love.
Oh, absolutely. I agree that I think episodes 2, 3 are still kind of the peak so far, because I mean, in many ways they have the most like dramatic kind of stakes built up, but I think these are really solid as well. I think 4 is too long, and it's the only one in the show so far, because it's the only one that's broken 40 minutes. But there's a ton of good stuff in it. I think I really like the whole idea of doing a little Seven Samurai story with Star Wars, which they've done before and they will do again, but this was a good version of it. I liked Gina Carano in it. I really liked all the stuff with the Mandalorian and kind of like questioning the whole idea of the helmet and like drawing attention to it, because I think you and I are on the same page that we like that they've kept him in the helmet, but it is something you kind of have to address if you're going to do it. And I thought they did a good job with that.
Yeah.
And then I think episode 5 is just, I think it's the perfect version of what it's trying to be, which is a mean little Western set in Mos Eisley and Tatooine, and I actually really liked how they do that, because I think it's a really interesting look at those settings through a totally different POV than Luke Skywalker. I think there's a moment where they talk about the Jawas and the Sand People, and the Mandalorian like immediately saying like, no, they're on their land, and like we just need to talk to them and negotiate. And I love, that's one of my favorite little Star Wars moments now, because it's such a great little turn, like flip the script moment. And then I think everything with this dumb little punk bounty hunter that the Mandalorian is taking around, and he's such a shithead, and the rival assassin is Ming-Na Wen, which is awesome, and just everything there, it is a mean little Western story, and this one was written and directed by Dave Filoni, and it shows. It's a very Dave Filoni Star Wars story.
Yes.
And it's great. It's exactly what it's kind of to me like the platonic ideal of a weekly Mandalorian episode. If 2 and 3 were sort of more story heavy, or at least like establishing things, this feels like the best version of the weekly. Like every week the Mandalorian has a new adventure with Baby Yoda somewhere else, which I think is where they're probably going to do a couple more of those before the season's over. And that was just like, yeah, perfect. Loved it.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way. I really liked in episode 4, I loved the Gina Carano character and like the idea of like, oh, right, shit. Of course, like, you have, like, the Imperial Remnant, but I don't feel like the old EU ever really engaged with the idea of, you also have all these, like, war vets from the Rebel Alliance side that were, like, in these incredible soldiers that did incredible feats that now, in a world of peace, what do they do? Which is a very samurai movie thing, right? It's like, once the war is over, what do all the soldiers do? And like I love that setup in that character and I really hope, and I suspect that she'll come back because she was in a bunch of the like marketing and posters and stuff. I bet she comes back in the last episode or the penultimate episode or something to help the Mando out of a sticky situation or something. But the idea of here's a rebel shock trooper down on her luck because the war is over. There's nothing left for her to do. She's probably a bit too kind of rough and tumble for like a proper military to actually hire her. So she's probably the new Republic doesn't really want those kinds of soldiers anymore that are a little bit off the leash. And that's just such a great concept and execution for a character like that I've just never quite seen executed in Star Wars with like this period of Star Wars history. Which is like a nice, unique. It's very rare in Star Wars for me to encounter like a character idea that feels like it's legitimately new for this universe and setting, and that character felt new to me in a way that was
I love that. I think even if she doesn't come back, I really like that this show has a big, great cast, but it's like Pedro Pascal is the only star. Like he's there every week. kind of. He's under a mask. We don't know how much of it is him and how much of it is like a stuntman or something. But you've got him there, and then what that means is that instead of like figuring out some way to have Gina Carano in every episode and like be on the ship with the Mando, which would not feel organic to like who those characters are, just like do the Gina Carano episode, and I feel like she got a nice meaty part in The Mandalorian, and if that's all we see of her, it's a memorable episode and appearance. And I think like they're doing that steadily with different people, like Amy Sedaris in episode 5, who I really enjoyed. I did not know I needed Amy Sedaris in Star Wars, but I really liked her being this cool mechanic who takes care of Baby Yoda. I thought episode 4 also just did some really good characterization with the Mandalorian, not just in all the helmet stuff, but like him trying to figure out what his like game plan is with this kid he has. And like it does feel like a very like nice selfless moment of like he's found this village, he's saved this village, that Baby Yoda will be happy here, but of course it's, you know, it's this kind of sad Western, we've got to keep moving on trope, and ultimately it doesn't work out and they have to keep going. But I thought that's probably the most crucial thing on an ongoing standpoint episode 4 does, is like more of that relationship. Episode 4 also has the best Baby Yoda stuff in terms of all the memes we've gotten. All the scene of him coming out with like his little mug, which has been just so well done. It's great. And him like playing with all the other kids. A+ Baby Yoda in episode 4.
I mean, the thing that's most amazing about it is that obviously they like conceived of, wrote, shot, edited all these episodes before anybody knew anything about Baby Yoda. And so, like, the fact that they, like, because there's a part of it that feels like they keep on one-upping themselves for, like, Twitter, but they can't have known what are, like, the specific things about Baby Yoda that people are reacting to, and they keep on giving us, like, the perfect screenshots every single week for people to fucking put on the internet and put, like, their dumb text over or whatever. They just... Whoever, like... if it's fucking Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni, the both of them, whoever are the people that are most responsible for the conceit of and execution of Baby Yoda, those people are fucking heroes. Like, I don't understand how they managed to, like, get it so perfectly the first time out without any outside, like, audience feedback.
They at least deserve a raise, because I wonder how much additional revenue in terms of subscribers Disney Plus is making solely on the back of Baby Yoda hype.
Yes. I mean, it is the thing driving conversation around the show, I feel.
It's kind of a perfect little Trojan horse, because you bring them in with the carrot of Baby Yoda, and then they stay for, like, the really cool space western adventures, you know? And talking about Beskar and shit, which is just cool. And then, episode 5 is so well done. I like that it takes place on Tatooine and in Mos Eisley and stuff, but it never... There was some argument online, but there's nothing like winking and nodding to me in this episode. Like, it very much feels organic. If he did go to Tatooine, of course he'd go to Mos Eisley, and it doesn't, like, they don't have, like, a cantina band playing the song or something, you know?
Yeah, because I feel like it is both really recognizably Mos Eisley, but it is also different. Like, the location has aged. Like, you can tell that, like, it is not the hub that it once was. Like, this is a place that the Mandalorian went to go, like, lay low where nobody's going to look for him, which is not, I feel like, what Mos Eisley would have been like during the original trilogy, where you see how, like, bustling it is when Luke and Obi-Wan go there. And here, it's, like, mostly kind of dead. And it feels like, I suspect, you know, nothing in the episode, like, intimates this directly, but, like, my, like, Star Wars head immediately goes to, well... They fucking murdered Jabba the Hutt in Return of the Jedi, and he was the kingpin of this whole area and the crime in this, like, sector of the galaxy. With Jabba the Hutt fucking murdered, like, this area has, like all the business that was happening here has moved to other places in the galaxy, right? That's, like, kind of, again, no dialogue tells you that, but that's just sort of what it feels like. And, you know, just, like, the one, like, great visual detail for, if you're a Star Wars fan, is... that the Mos Eisley Cantina is where the bartender's like, hey, we don't serve droids in here, and don't let C-3PO and R2-D2 in. And then now the bartender is a droid, and, like, shows you how the demographics of this area of the world have changed a lot since the last.
And those are the kind of details you would expect of Dave Filoni, who is probably further in the weeds than anyone working in Star Wars today. he would have to be, given his lengthy relationship with the franchise. I really this shot was in the trailer, but I just have to shout it out again. The stormtrooper helmets on pikes outside of Mos Eisley is one of my new favorite Star Wars images, and it's another one that just sort of tells you so much about this place. In that, I think it's both the death of Jabba the Hutt and then the fall of the Empire, which one of the other big things in Mos Eisley is all the stormtroopers who were constantly around. Just like, this is a different place, and it's kind of a dead spaceport. And yeah, I loved all of that. I loved the scene with the sand people. I think having the Mandalorian go out and get himself a dewback is fun. Like, but none of it feels like it's cloying. See, this was what you remember from the movie. It's like the movie. It's not doing that at all, and it's just.
I mean, this is coming from the dude who somehow managed to pull off bringing Darth Maul back from the dead. Like, if there's one dude who can do a thing that seems like it's going to be fan cloying and somehow it just, like, actually works really well, it's Dave Filoni. Like, that's, like, his whole career in Star Wars.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah, and the little shithead who was the other bounty hunter, very good at playing a little shithead, and...
Yeah, I've seen people online say that, like, making fun of him and saying he had bad acting, and I feel like those people are missing the point of that character. Yeah. That dude is a piece of shit, and the guy who plays him fucking perfectly. Like, you just... I mean, it's the kind of thing where you're supposed to know as soon as you see that guy that he's going to betray Mando and get fucking killed. Like, that's who this character is. That's who they were brought up to be, and this is the end for this little shithead who, like, another great little, like, visual detail is he's introduced to us, like, sitting in the seat where Han is sitting in A New Hope with, like, Greedo and all that, and he's in the same, like, Han Solo posture, but that kid's not fucking Han Solo. He wants to be Han Solo, but he doesn't have the character of a Han Solo to actually...
And I love that in the end, it's very, like, Man with No Name. Once he has decided to dispatch with this little shithead, it is not difficult for the Mandalorian. It is not like a massive expenditure of energy. He's just a faster draw, and he gets him, and Baby Yoda's fine. Like, I love that.
Yeah, and that the main action set piece is not him having to kill this little piece of shit. It's them having to get Ming-Na Wen, which that scene is so good. The speeder scene is so good with the fucking flash bombs. Oh, holy shit. What a great... Like, that feels like pulled straight from the Clone Wars. Like, that feels like an idea he had for a Clone Wars action scene they never got around to or something.
I was genuinely astonished to see it, because it felt like it was on a different, like, budget level than what The Mandalorian has been doing. Which is, it feels like the kind of idea you'd pull off in TV animation, not TV live action. I mean, The Mandalorian is obviously an expensive show, but they have not done an action sequence that felt that elaborate before, with that much movement and, like, because most of them are, like, in one sort of contained setting, and they're very good at that. This was, we're moving across this entire line of sight and doing these big, like, there's a lot of CGI in it. It's, excellent stuff.
Yes, and it continues the trend of Mandalorian just getting his ass kicked every episode, which I love. I think is perfect. I love that, like, again, someone like that little piece of shit Mando can take care of, but, like, a trained, honed Imperial, like, ex-Imperial assassin, he's going to have a hard time bringing her down, and he's going to get his fucking ass kicked for most of it.
I also love that now that he's got the new Beskar, we're starting to see, like, the different scars he's getting in it. Like, he gets that one big hit to the chest, and now he's got a big scorch mark on his chest, and it's just, that's such good design work. Especially for a character who is defined by what he's wearing, because we don't see his face. So, yes. Mandalorian is a great show. We've got 3 episodes left, 6, 7, 8. I think it's kind of too bad. I will be out of the country the week episode 8 airs, so we're not going to be able to talk about the finale until, like, late January. But we'll probably do a check-in after episode 7, because episode 7 is coming out the same week as The Rise of Skywalker. Which I feel like the whole timing of that is a little odd that I guess it's just when they were able to launch Disney Plus and stuff, but still, it's a lot of Star Wars all at once, and most of it's good, so...
Yep, and I mean, I'm personally more excited for Mandalorian than I am Rise of Skywalker. I'm excited for Rise of Skywalker in very different ways than I'm excited for the next.
You know what I wish they would do with Rise of Skywalker is if you go to see it in the theater, when the credits are done, they should just show episode 7 of The Mandalorian, just as a reward. Like, if you were disappointed in Rise of Skywalker, here, just watch 30 minutes of The Mandalorian on the big screen. That'd be great.
Oh my god, Mandalorian would look so good.
That's one thing I have to say.
The wide
Mandalorian
vistas.
is really good at anamorphic widescreen photography. Like almost all Star Wars filmed media is in anamorphic widescreen because it's so key to the visual identity, and most of it's
even Clone Wars is animated in anamorphic widescreen.
Yeah,
which is very cool.
And a lot of the video games. Like I actually was genuinely surprised Jedi Fallen Order didn't do it for cutscenes. Like, I'm fine with it, because if you do it in a video game, you're not actually framing it, you're just putting black bars on it, so I'm fine with it. But I was surprised to see that. And I think sometimes Star Wars ancillary media does the widescreen stuff better than others. Like, Mandalorian is as good as any Star Wars film at doing the widescreen stuff, and that's really impressive. And yeah, same as with like Clone Wars also pays, from what I've seen of it. Obviously you've seen more than me, but it pays very good attention to it as well. And it's just like, it's part of like it. If you get it right, it goes a long way to feeling like Star Wars, you know?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, it's a good show. We're liking it. A lot of good stuff out there right now. There are a lot of good movies you can go see. We talked about some games. There's one normal game in Pokemon, one crazy game in Death Stranding. This was a fun episode. We will be back next week probably. I think next week's episode we're penciling in is going to be the Victory Gundam episode of Weekly Suit Gundam, which will be in both of our main feeds. And then we will have another main weekly stuff episode the following week, which is where we'll talk Rise of Skywalker and some other stuff. Those plans might shift a little bit. Like, obviously, if something big happens and they formally announce the Xbox 2 or something, we'll have a normal podcast next week. But barring that, look for Weekly Suit Gundam, look for Star Wars reviews, and after that, we'll be starting our decade recap. A lot of good stuff coming your way. Yeah.
I got to build some zip lines.